Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
That night was cold. The sticky after-storm air clung to me like a wet rag, and the fog started rising. I could see exactly where I needed to go. Behind me, I could hear the unmistakable sound of feet pounding on the pavement and the deep, winded breathing of a desperate charge. He was surprisingly fast, but I was quicker and more desperate. He was an out-of-shape, overweight, middle-aged man, and I was none of those things. By then, he had been chasing me for about a mile through the rugged woods. I also doubted that he could breathe very well through that modified pillowcase draped over his head. His eyes were probably bulging from exhaustion through the holes in the fabric. I hoped he would keel over dead from a massive heart attack, but luck wasn't on my side yet. I sprinted across the 2-lane road toward a community that I could see from that hill over the tree line below. My leggings were in tatters from foliage grabbing onto my clothes. My shoes had been long missing, and I had stripped my muddy socks off probably a mile ago. My bare feet were aching and probably bleeding from running across forest debris and gravel, but I persevered. I didn't care about the pain. My life depended on escaping from this psychotic man. No matter what, he wasn't going to win. I was. He had been driving with me tied up in the trunk for hours, but I was carefully sawing at the extension cords he used for rope with a pocket knife. The trunk was utterly dark, so I had to navigate only by touch. The trunk had a pungent metallic odor that I realized was the smell of old, dried blood. There was also a small leak in the trunk, which happened to be dripping on my head, adding to the torture of this hell. The car was ancient, so it didn't have an escape button or hatch from the trunk. After what seemed like hours, the car had suddenly come to a stop. I heard the door slam shut and then heard his feet crunching on gravel as he marched toward the rear. The trunk popped open to reveal dusk had come and that the pillowcase psycho was back. Well, hello, beautiful. I just had to stop to get one last look. From hours of seething anger and the primal urge to survive, I leaped from the trunk, lunging for his face with that pocket knife. His eyes popped like a grape, exactly where I was aiming. Blood immediately began gushing from the wound. His face twisted in agony as he screamed a guttural roar of pain and fell to his knees. I thought about stabbing him again, or trying to beat the shit out of him, but last second, I decided he would probably win that battle. Every hour of jogging and running in the mornings had prepared me for this moment. Not knowing how much time that had given me, I sprinted for the woods. He soon followed. Hours later, I was sprinting for an unknown town through a dense patch of woods long before sunrise. It was nearly pitch black, except for little moonlight peeking between the clouds. Earlier that day, it had rained. Before all this chaos, I hadn't even considered how the rain could be a curse. The mud in this part of the woods was becoming thicker and deeper with every step. It soon became obvious that I had entered a swamp. Soon, I was up to my knees in water, then my waist. It had been a while since I'd seen or heard the man behind me. I hoped and prayed that he had given up on his pursuit. Thoughts began to form about what I would do when I finally made it to the town. Would I run to a house and bang on the front door, hoping that someone would answer? In the trunk, I discovered that he had taken my cell phone, wallet, and keys, but he still needed to check my jacket pocket, where he would have found that pocket knife. Now it was my sole possession. I was swimming at this point. The water smelled putrid and dank, filling my nostrils with that gassy, unmistakable smell of a swamp. After calming myself and building up my nerve, I checked around again and did not see the man. He was gone. My spirits lifted and I chuckled with glee. That morning had started like any other. I'd wake up around sunrise, jog for a mile, shower, and then stop at Dunkin' to get an iced coffee before going to work. But something went horribly wrong this time. As I was jogging past a nearby park, I heard a car stop behind me down the block. The door opened and I could hear someone get out. This happens occasionally, and I usually try to ignore people, but this time, something didn't feel right, and I'd soon find out why. The next thing I remember, I'm waking up in the front seat of a car. My body showed obvious signs of being sexually assaulted, and I won't give you the vivid details. The back of my head was drenched in dried blood, along with a pounding headache. The car reeked of cigarettes, and the old upholstery was cracked in a million places. The man who owned this clearly didn't care much about it. I looked around to see if I could spot him. The car was parked in the woods somewhere. The car was parked by an old camper looking like it was older than my dad. The only path out was a set of ruts in the ground that led to what I assume was this horrible man's home. Not seeing the man, I decided to get out of the car, hastily make my way down this path, and see where it took me. My leggings had been ripped open at the crotch, and my knees were torn open from my falling to the ground. After making it to the top of a hill, I could see that the path led to a winding 2-lane road, but I couldn't tell where I was. The cold morning air really reminded me of all this. That was when I heard feet pounding up the path behind me. I could see the man charging at me like a bull. The pillowcase over his head topped a large, hefty body capable of surprising speed. I bolted, praying that my morning jogs would give me endurance beyond his. I next remember waking up in his trunk, tied up like a hog heading out to be slaughtered. The water had become shallower after a few minutes. I examined myself and found that my body was covered in algae and mud and reeked of that awful smell. I trudged through the mud once again. The clouds had completely obscured the moon. It was so dark that I had to feel my way through the woods, making me move very slowly and carefully now. I could see the lights of the town through the foliage, partially guiding my way. I was almost running, but still trying to be careful. Lining the road to this town was some very thick foliage, so thick that the lights could barely peek through. I was making my way past them. Suddenly, I fell. I had fallen into a ditch covered by those plants. My knee had snapped and my ankle rolled. The fire and hot pain were shooting all through my body. Even the slightest twitch set it off. I was writhing and screaming in agony when I saw a car coming. "Hey!" I shouted. "Stop! Please help!" waving my arms frantically while trying to bite back the pain. The car slowed and pulled to the curb nearby. Through the radiance, I could see a figure coming my way. I couldn't see the person because their brights were blinding me. I raised my arm to shield my eyes. It was him. The pillowcase was once again pulled over his head. I noticed a bloodstain streaming from the gaping wound where his eye had once been. His other eye glared at me with white-hot anger through the hole he cut in the fabric. "I got you now, bitch!" He gripped a tire iron. "You're gonna pay for my eye!" He barked through gritted teeth. What was I going to do against this gigantic man wielding a tire iron? He took a long arching swing at me, and I rolled. His weapon struck the ground with a ringing thud. Pocket knife in hand, I swing for his neck. I missed my intended mark and stabbed him in the back of his right ear. He bellowed in pain, grabbing for the wound, blood squirting out between his fingers. "Fucking bitch!" He swung again, connecting with my right shoulder. More pain. More ways to slow me down. The man wrestled me to the ground, trying to force the knife from my hand. My teeth crunched into the bones of his hand as hard as I could. The taste of his blood poured over my teeth, making me nauseous. He bellowed again. I yanked the pillowcase off in a fury and had the knife in my hand. This time, though, I took the opportunity to snatch the tire iron away from him and struck the top of his head with as much force as possible. He went out immediately, dropping to the ground. I don't know why I wanted to see his face, but something triggered deep down inside when it happened. All the memories of everything he did to me, the faces he probably made while he had his way with my unconscious body, and the sheer ugliness of this awful man made me snap. Something primal took over then. I'm not sure exactly how to describe it, but the memories of what he had done to me and what he had probably planned to do made me erupt in a blind rage. I gripped that tire iron so hard that my knuckles went white. I bashed his face so many times that it barely looked human when my rage was satisfied. His crooked teeth were now either fragmented or gone. His fat tomato nose was flattened into a mushy wound, and both eyes were popped now. His ugly acne-scarred face was now bruised, busted open, and swollen. If he did manage to wake up, he'd be in for an even rougher time. I felt happy about it, but I'm still unsure how to process it. Should I be proud? Should I be ashamed? Or should I be afraid? I needed to get out of there in case he woke up. I searched through his pockets and found his car keys. I decided to also snatch his wallet so I could identify him. I found something else, too, that baffled me. In the same pocket as his wallet, I found what appeared to be a chunk of my hair. I felt around my head and realized that it was. After immense pain and effort, I dragged my useless leg over to the car and hauled myself into the driver's seat. The car rumbled to life, much to my joy. I turned the car around and drove. Luckily, I had injured my left leg, and this was an automatic shifter. This town was unknown to me, but I drove around until I found an officer. He tried to calm me down, but the words poured out of my mouth in such a fury that it just sounded like babbling. I must have been a sight, with mud and algae up to my stomach, clothes shredded, no shoes or socks, twigs in my hair, and the stink of swamp. The officer did his best to calm me down, and after a while, I managed to tell him the story. He took me down to the station and brought me a cup of coffee and a blanket. I remember thinking about how many showers it would take to clean off the swamp gunk and clean myself of the filthy memories from that evening. The police found him still unconscious by that ditch. He confessed to my assault and 3 murders, but DNA testing later pinpointed him to 12 others. All of them were around my age and looked strikingly like me. In his home, they found boxes of demented memorabilia like their underwear. He also collected snippets of their hair that he kept in the drawer next to his bed. You can probably guess why. What did I learn from all this? When I got home, I showered 4 times that day. I did this for days, never really feeling clean again. After the ordeal with the man, I never leave the house without my pistol, a can of mace on my keychain, and an overly paranoid vigilance of those around me. Sometimes I feel eyes watching me from behind, and I walk a little faster. I also bought a house and raised a German Shepherd puppy that I named Walter, who now joins me on my morning jogs. All of these things combined still don't make me feel completely safe. Then there are also the nightmares, in which he brutalizes me and finally kills me. There's no escape from those. Therapy helps, but how can you escape your own subconscious thoughts? But the one thing I really learned is that the worst kind of monsters aren't imaginary creatures in movies or books. They are other human beings. Sometimes, the worst people can bring the monster out of you, too.
Whoever popularized the phrase zombie apocalypse and thought of what it entailed needed to be horsewhipped, flogged, and given a good old-fashioned spanking for good measure. At least that was the opinion held by Leon Winters. He drove his modified armored bank car down the interstate, the city of Dallas, Texas growing closer with each passing second. Leon was a Jackal, the unofficial nickname for the freelance zombie killers that entered the infected zones. Their job was to kill the undead for the benefit of civilians who were disappointed at having their zombie apocalypse fantasies dashed, but too cowardly to enact them. When the undead had arrived, they had not brought the ruin of humanity with them. The militaries of the world had been quick to contain the hordes, setting up quarantine zones that consisted of many cities and towns, and a vaccine had been made by the Trinity Corporation. But with that came the trouble of what to do with the infected. Sending the military or police in to exterminate them was supposedly deemed unethical and a risk to the personnel and any possible uninfected survivors. That was where the Jackals came in. Originally formed as a vigilante effort to fight the zombies, they eventually caught the attention of the government, who outlawed their work unless it was used for public services or entertainment. By the sadistic whims of some trickster god for all Leon knew, that translated to getting paid to live-stream zombie snuff videos. The insanity of it would have made him laugh if not for some of his viewership. Reading some of their requests made him ill sometimes. Set them on fire, one might say. Kill them with household appliances, another would read. Kill only the females, read a rather nasty viewer, to which he just blocked and reported them. Yes, sir, this was the post-apocalypse everyone had waited so eagerly for, where society flourished in most places and became third-world undead-infested shitholes in others, where the rugged survivors were just some schmucks with cameras who slaughtered the undead for the vicarious pleasure of anonymous gorehounds who couldn't be bothered to do it themselves. Leon sighed, then pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit it, letting the bitter, earthy smell of the tobacco fill his lungs and steal another year of his life, so the doctor had told him once. Wonder if I'd taste like tobacco to zombies, he mused in a moment of dark humor. Wouldn't that be a sight? Oh God, these are the worst lungs I've ever eaten. What the hell did you do to yourself, you poor bastard? He laughed quietly at the image, taking some solace in the fact that he had at least inconvenienced them. Hey, they'd be devouring him. He may as well go out giving them the proverbial bird. Pulling up to the cordon outside the city, Leon showed his ID after a routine inspection. He was cleared to enter, though he heard one of the soldiers muttering "Jackal prick" under his breath. Not that Leon could blame him. He knew his profession was less than ethical. Driving a few more miles, the cordon had been set up to prevent the zombies from getting too far. He eventually entered the city. Sure enough, there were a group of shambling corpses a quarter of a mile from him. Making sure that his body armor was properly secured, he inspected his weapons. A large tactical knife, an assault rifle, a pump shotgun, and a semi-automatic handgun. He put a series of grenades and spare mags on his belt and in his tactical pouch respectively, along with bandages and other medical supplies. Once he was done, he put on the helmet with the gas mask, then pressed a button on the side. The eyes of his mask lit up, and the chat box on the side appeared on his heads-up display. With a ping, his first commenter gave the classic greeting of "First." Saying nothing, his gloved hands grasped the steering wheel as he revved his engine. The commenters began to respond accordingly, prompting various responses of "Oh shit," or "Here it comes," and other eager exclamations. Interstage right, he thought. Glad he didn't say it out loud, since he didn't know if that was the right term to use. He put the vehicle into drive and floored the gas pedal, plowing into the horde of zombies in front of him. Bodies splattered all over the truck, the sidewalk, and the nearby buildings, decorating the vehicle and the road behind him with a grisly new paint job. For the sake of style, he quickly turned the vehicle so that it drifted along the road for a few feet before stopping. Sure enough, the chat was filled to the brim with excited pings, so much so that he muted the sound. He gave a thumbs up to the camera in his mask. He had made his career as a Jackal by doing what he did without an intro, catchphrase, commentary, or any words whatsoever, due to wanting to be more efficient and professional. That, and he just wasn't much of a talker. Some of the thirst comments he read only made him that much gladder he kept his face hidden from anyone who wasn't in the military. Slinging the shotgun over his shoulder, he then jumped out of the vehicle and landed on the ground, assault rifle in his hands. He let off a few shots into one of the nearest zombies that had survived his Mr. Mercedes onslaught. 3 shots in the chest, 2 in the head. It fell with a sound like a throat made of sandpaper, though he couldn't say why that was the first thing that came to mind. He closed and locked the door of his truck. As luck would have it, another one of the surviving zombies was one of the freshies. Zombies that didn't rot. It shrieked at him, then started running straight at him. Pretending to be caught off guard for the audience's sake, he let the freshie tackle him, struggling to clamp its teeth into his flesh. Not that it would have done much good due to the body armor. This was interrupted by Leon driving his knife into its throat. It gurgled. Then he removed his handgun and fired under his chin, coating the camera eyes of his mask in blood, much to the excitement of his viewers. He felt the freshie fall limply off of him, and he wiped away the blood and retrieved the knife. The timer, which had started the second he had exited the vehicle, continued its countdown from 60 minutes. That was all he needed to do for his streams. Kill zombies for a specific amount of time, then just leave. And so that was what he was setting about doing. He lightly jogged, albeit weighted down by the armor and shotgun. Zombies, fresh and rotted alike, walked the streets, their heads snapping to attention at the sight of new meat. As he aimed the rifle at him, firing off controlled bursts, one of his viewers, to his annoyance, began to spam the chat with "Grenade, grenade, dumbass, grenade." Others began to join in on the complaints, not seeming to get that he was trying to lure the freshies in so he could shoot them and save his grenades for if he was surrounded by the rotted. Eventually, though, he complied and pulled the pin, throwing it in their direction, blowing several of the zombies to pieces. Now exasperated that his compliance with backseaters had caused him to take on this next duty, he walked to where the grenade had exploded, then began shooting the remains. Still, he said nothing. He needed to put on a good show. As if to emphasize this, a notification appeared, showing that he had received $250 from one of his viewers. Given a thumbs up to acknowledge this, he continued. He wouldn't be going too deep into the city, just a few miles in at most. Then the stream would end and he would head back to the vehicle. He snuck up behind the zombie in a nearby alley, his viewers sending in enthusiastic comments like, "Ooh shit, he's gonna do the thing. He's gonna do the thing." Sure enough, he did the thing, i.e., grabbing the zombie's head and with a grunt snapping its neck. This was easily accomplished by virtue of it being rotted. It collapsed with a raspy snarl mixed with gurgling as it died. A notification told him that he had received $450 from some username he didn't bother to memorize, just giving another thumbs up. Leon continued on his less than merry way, shooting, stabbing, and bludgeoning zombies with nearby objects. As he went, he took notice of the ruined orange jumpsuits many of the freshies and rotteds wore. It wasn't much of a secret by now what many inmates faced as a means of cutting down on prison costs, but it still made him sick to think about. That didn't stop a few of his viewers from expressing their assumptions of what the zombies did when they were still human, and declaring this to be justice. Justice. Leon didn't care what they had done. Nobody deserved to be turned into a lifeless husk, forced to shamble around, eating people. Not even the rich old fools who had put that policy in place. The kindest thing that he could do for them was give them a quick death, and ignore some of his viewers that demanded slower, gorier deaths. A couple of them even began saying things like how other jackals were much better because they straight up tortured the zombies. It was true. Leon had watched those streams, and that was how he was able to emphasize with that soldier's perspective on jackals. His ruminations were interrupted by a message. "You have received $560 from..." Leon didn't look at the username, just gave another thumbs up, then continued. At some point, he checked his timer. 10 minutes left and counting. "Oh, damn, I've been at it for that long already?" he thought. Isn't time supposed to fly when you're having fun? Evidently not if the timer had anything to say about it. Well, at least he was almost finished. This was interrupted by a high-pitched shriek that caused the zombies to stand still. Any attention they had on him was diverted to the sound, as was Leon's. He had encountered a couple of these before, but not often. The virus, known colloquially as the Trinity strain, after the company who accidentally made it and made the subsequent vaccine, was not the typical zombie contagion. For some people, it immediately turned them into shambling corpses through rapid necrosis, letting them keep only the instinct to eat. Others turned into the freshies, who also possessed a desire to eat and nothing else. But for a select few, the virus made them into the aberrants. These were stronger, faster, and more intelligent than the average zombie. There was one catch, of course. Like the others, its humanity was sacrificed by its need to eat. But unlike the other types, it still had enough functionality in its brain to enjoy eating, and to not only be pleased by the feeding, but by the chase and the kill. The kicker? It scared the zombies too, and for very good reason. Unlike the zombies, it didn't just eat humans. Case in point, a block away, Leon watched as the howling aberrant pounced onto a freshie, then dug its teeth into the side of its neck, pulling away and chewing messily. It was a tall, muscular man with long, shaggy black hair. Its face was mutilated and eyes completely bloodshot. Its nails had grown out into long, jagged claws. As it chewed, it watched its prey choke, milky eyes looking at the hunk of meat that used to be attached to its throat, then breathe its last, at which point the aberrant spat out the flesh it wasn't already chewing. It wasn't human anymore, but it was still just human enough in the worst possible ways. The aberrant turned its bloody face towards Leon, and even though the gore coated its face, he knew it was smiling at the sight of fresher meat. Of course, Leon had no intention of letting this thing eat him. His past experiences with aberrants were the reason he wore body armor after all. He ignored the chat exploding into a chorus of "holy shit," "run," "what the fuck is that," and more helpful screeches of "grenade, grenade, grenade." Closing the chat, he set his assault rifle on the ground. It would do him no good. He was glad he brought the shotgun with him as he removed it from his shoulder. It charged at him, snarling, splattering any of the zombies frozen in primal fear that stood in its path. Pumping the shotgun, Leon prepared himself, knees bent slightly for the strategy he had devised for these creatures. It was just 10 feet in front of him now, and it was clearly banking on its strength being its saving grace rather than speed or skill. It was trying to knock him down, then eat him. The thing was, like its siblings before it didn't know Leon Winters as well as it thought it did. It thought he was standing still because he was afraid like the freshie had been. But just as it was 9 feet away, it leapt for him, and he rolled out of its path, letting it skid along the asphalt, giving it what had to be the world's worst knee and elbow scrapes, if the Crimson Trail had anything to say about it. As it raised its head up to furiously regard its would-be prey and attack again, it came face to muzzle with Leon's shotgun, which then erupted into a brief flash and a loud crack as it sent the slug round into its skull. Its arms flailed limply in the air for a moment, then it collapsed, the pulpy ruin of its head spreading over the asphalt. Leon let out the breath he had been holding, then pulled back on the slide of the shotgun, ejecting the smoking shell. Seeing that their apex predator was now dead, the zombies broke out of their fearful trance and ignored Leon completely as they began gathering around the once hulking monstrosity. They didn't actively hunt humans or each other. They were more opportunistic when it came to food. A beast that was still human enough would serve as a perfect meal for them. Sighing, Leon picked up his rifle, slung the shotgun over his shoulder, and walked back to the truck. He checked his timer. It had run down, and the number of zombies he had killed, not counting the ones he had run over, showing itself to be about 67. A lot of jackals didn't get more than 50, either due to focusing too much on showing off, sightseeing, or being big-mouthed jackasses, whereas Leon was more pragmatic, saving any spectacle for the intro. Once secured inside the truck, he removed the ammo from the guns and switched the safeties back on. He then reopened the chat, which was exploding again with praise, numerous donations adding up to the sum of $30,500, including the previous donations, and still more grating comments asking about why he didn't use grenades or why he didn't kill any more zombies on the way back. Clenching his teeth, Leon forced himself to wave into the camera eyes of his mask. A message showing the chat that his next stream was scheduled for about 2 weeks from then. With that, he switched his helmet off, looked for the cushion he used for long trips, then pressed his face into it and gave a muffled, cathartic scream. His frustrations quelled, he cranked up his truck, then began to drive out of Dallas. Stopping at the cordon, he was inspected for bites with the same soldier that insulted him before pointing out the blood covering Leon in the truck, then sardonically asking,
"Well, they do say that you'll never work a day in your life if you love your job."
Leon ignored the quip, instead hopping back into his truck once the inspection was finished, then began driving away. That was what separated Leon from fictional zombie killers. They had goals, ambitions, motives. Hunt down an evil corporation spreading the zombie virus, look for a cure, escape a zombie-infested city, survive in a shopping mall, kill zombies because they were brutal sociopaths who found a good excuse, etc. Not Leon. Leon only did what his viewers wanted, did what he could to pay for everyday necessities. It was a day in the office for him. That was why he put up with those jackasses on his streams, save for the ones who said truly obscene things. He couldn't block or report people for annoying him unless it crossed the line into harassment, a matter of semantics in his work. As he continued driving down the deserted interstate, he thought over his job. The soldier had missed the mark. Leon didn't enjoy his job, nor when he was in Special Forces, not now. He was just damn good at it. Society didn't accept people of his skill set, though. They only enjoyed watching him use it for their own benefit. His fans might mourn his loss if he ever met his end during a stream, if only because they'd never see his brand of zombie murder again. But they'd quickly move on to some other jackal, one who was more compliant and talkative than himself. Still, he'd keep at it. There had been a few fans who had messaged him personally after streams, asking if he was okay, if he needed to take a break, saying he seemed a bit on edge while filming, despite him not speaking a word. It was for those fans that he did this. They may have liked living their zombie fantasies through him, but at least they cared about him as a person. He heard a ping from his phone, a message from one of his viewers. He knew he'd hear more, and he'd go through them when he got home. Who knew? Maybe another one of the more considerate fans might have messaged him out of concern. It was a naive hope, sure, but at least it gave him something to look forward to in this line of work.
I woke up to the sight of my wife's bare back, the constellation of freckles that spanned both shoulder blades under a wavy nebula of red hair. I reached over and tapped her shoulder. "Honey, it's time," I said. Her body stiffened and she heaved a sigh. "I don't want to," she mumbled. Something about the early morning grogginess made her sound like our teenage daughter. "Come on, baby, you agreed to this." A slight woman, she floated up into a sitting position, grumbling something about how this funeral was going to rob her of her Saturday. I nodded with a smirk. "But it's your uncle, honey. I didn't like him." Nobody liked Uncle Ron, for that matter. I could see it already. The family at the service, shaking hands with well-wishers, enduring endless waves of "I'm sorry for your loss," doing their best to look like they actually felt any sort of loss. I know that sounds cold, but Ron just had a way of leaving you feeling damp and slimy. He smiled and joked as much as any uncle stereotype. It was in the gaps between sentences, the leers between laughs, the ticks between seconds, that you glimpsed something more real, much deeper, and much darker than this facade of a brown-eyed good old boy he tried to sell you. I met Ron the first time I attended my wife's family reunion. That was before I was family. You think you learn so much at one of those big family events, right? Nah. You learn what the family is comfortable letting you learn. The real learning is 5 or 6 reunions deep, when everyone stops dressing up for you, so to speak. So I met this cousin, and that aunt, and, oh, by the way, this Uncle Ron. The large man with the trimmed beard that is practically steamrolling his way into my personal space, all loud and jolly. Gee, if this is what Uncle Ron is like in one evening, he must be quite a character when you join the fam officially and see him on a regular basis. First thing I notice is Ron's habit of his eyes darting around like ping-pong balls full of jumping beans. I didn't know what was up. Maybe he had kids and he was dabbing in some of their Ritalin. After maybe 2 or 3 reunions, I noticed that whenever Ron comes barreling over to me, my wife slips away just as quickly. Then I start noticing that his eyes don't sling around at random. They rapid tick in the direction of my wife, wherever she happened to be. Seeing this behavior hold up for many family shindigs to come, I started seeing what would happen if I put myself between my wife and Ron's line of sight. Maybe he knew I was onto him. Maybe he was trying to hide his awareness of my knowing. Either way, cock-blocking his eyes made the jovial mask drop. Those black eyes kindled with hateful embers. So, from that point on, whenever I knew Uncle Ron was going to be around, I stayed shackled at the ankle to my wife, if you get me. Over the years, he started invading the personal space of other tender young female kinfolk. He never did anything, not that I knew of. A few years ago, he kind of vanished. People talked about him once in a while. Something about being really sick. I could have told you that. Something about being on extra strong medication that makes it difficult for him to come out and join us as his usual flannel and camel-clad beer basket self. Nobody missed him after that. Again, I don't mean to be cold, because I'm sure that nobody misses him even now. But this is the American Midwest, and we say goodbye to the recently departed, be they creepy family members or famous serial killers that just got the chair. My wife pressed her long fingers to her eyebrow, and her sea-green eyes stared at something I couldn't see. I joined her in sitting up. I haven't heard any movement from Lindsay's room yet. She's probably still out. Well, then go wake her up, my wife snapped. Okay, since you asked so nicely. And I rapped my knuckles on my daughter's door and made the announcement it was time to get up and at him because Uncle Ron wasn't going to see himself off. I don't want to. I snorted, like mother, like daughter. Eventually, we were all up, but everybody's movements were slow and reluctant, to the point that I had to scrap my plans for making a hot expanse of breakfast and switch to toasted muffins with butter. It was clear that nobody was thinking about Uncle Ron or the family. I won't lie, I was thinking about myself, too. I knew I wouldn't be able to sit with a cup of coffee in my hand and our fat orange-striped cat Chester on my lap, providing the silence with the soundtrack of his purr. But I still had enough room in my heart to support my wife's family. A hunched Lindsay shuffled through the kitchen like an old woman, strawberry blonde hair tangled and robbed of its luster by sleep. I practically threw an English muffin at her, and she gave me that indignant shrug that teenagers practice most of their waking hours. Move faster. We've got a deadline. She rolled her eyes. Another finely tuned teenage skill. My wife passed the top of the stairs in a blink of pink bathrobe. How many toasted muffins for my amazing wife that dodged the genes that made Uncle Ron? No answer. Oh, 3 today. Okay. Damn, we're hungry. She came downstairs, transformed into someone fit for a funeral, as I was buttering her last muffin. I handed her the halved bread and a plate, and she froze. Why the hell did you make me 3? I know you wanted 12, but I gotta eat too, you know. She swatted my shoulder and turned before I could see her stifled smile. I reloaded the toaster with more English muffins and bolted upstairs to get myself ready. Here's the thing I've learned about formal and or somber events. If you have a dick, you're ready in a fraction of the time it takes anyone else that doesn't. Either that or I'm just sloppy. I found my dressiest blue shirt and tie, dug out the last pair of slacks that fit, and called it even. I nearly ran Lindsay over when I came out of the bedroom. Dad, you look like you're ready. Here's the keys to the car. Be a peach. Start it up for us, would you? She took the keys and stomped down the stairs toward the kitchen. Good girl, just like her mom. Henry, can you come here for a second? I heard my wife call from downstairs. Why can't you come up here? Henry! Okay, be right there. I made sure my tie didn't make me look like a complete idiot before I answered my wife's summons. I tumbled down the stairs where she was waiting for me, holding out her palms. I can't find the car keys. I smiled really big, just in time for the sound of our big, ugly green sedan to turn over in the garage. Found them. She gently slapped me. I'll file domestic battery charges later. You're pretty much ready, right? Sure. It was when we were moving toward the door, and Katie grabbed the door handle, that I heard her say, Henry, can you come here for a second? I raised my shoulders as though she could see me behind her. Hey, hello, I'm right here. My wife turned around and looked at me funny. What? You asked me if I could come here. Well, I'm here, see? Genuine confusion froze my wife's expression, and she slowly shook her head. As my wife's mouth hung slightly open, I heard her voice a second time. From behind me. From somewhere upstairs. Are you still in the house? You better not be in the car without me. Come up here for a second, please. I stared at her. You heard that, right? She shook her head again. Heard what? I tightened my arms around myself. Let's just get in the car and go. She nodded, her look of puzzlement still not leaving her face. She looked at me like I might not be quite all right. I wasn't sure if I was. She opened the garage door that led outside. I was bitten by the exhaust from the sedan. Teenagers. Why'd my daughter didn't open the garage door first? I don't know. My wife stepped into the garage, and as soon as I tried to step after her, the door snapped shut with a resolute slam. The hell? Henry, come on. I just need you for a few seconds. Came the voice again. It was indistinguishable from my wife's. But my wife was getting in the car. I heard the car door shut. Thanks for slamming the door in my face, I shouted. I tried the door, but it was locked. That meant it was locked from the outside. How? How could that be? I can hear you downstairs, my wife called. I can see you in the garage, I replied. But the voice didn't answer. I fumbled with both the latch to the deadbolt and the lock in the center of the doorknob. It made no difference. I peered through the glass of the door, and that was the first time I noticed that I couldn't see my wife anywhere. Just my daughter sitting in the driver's seat of the car as the exhaust fumes began to haze my view. I fruitlessly rattled the door. My anger started to get the best of me, and I pounded on the door as if it would get anyone's attention. It shook one of the pictures off the wall, and it fell face first and shattered. Damn it! I yelled and went for the mess of broken glass. I knew which picture it was before I picked it up. It had to have been the one my wife treasured the most. The photograph of all of us standing in front of the house when we finally got a loan for it. A photo that was snapped by Uncle Ron himself. Behind the jagged teeth of broken glass, indeed, was a photo of the house, but it was wrong. It was a black and white printed photo. It looked like it had been clipped out from a paper. None of us were in it. I gingerly removed the picture from the frame just in case there might be another picture sharing its space. But there was nothing. Not in the frame, not in the floor. I tried to tell myself that the picture I remembered must still be hanging up. I looked up at the wall and my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. There were supposed to be 3 other picture frames besides the one I held. A family photo at a reunion, one of my wife in her 20s, and one of me as a teen. The high-quality Kodak of my wife had been swapped out for another newspaper photo, one of her that could have been taken in the last 2 years. The one of me looked like a mugshot, again from a newspaper. The family photo reunion did have a group of people in it, but it wasn't family. It was a group of policemen gathered on the lawn of our house. They were focused on a couple of men in trench coats wearing gloves and handling a few items in plastic bags. It looked every bit like a forensic team. I came closer to see if I could make out what they were handling. "Henry, come on! I've lost track of how many times I've called you." I finally looked in the direction of the stairs. The wall next to the steps was always where we kept most of our family photos. Something inside me told me that I didn't want to look at those pictures. Why? I don't know. I began moving toward the first step. My eyes were locked on the closet picture on the wall, and I couldn't look away. I could finally see it. Another picture clipped from a newspaper. This one was of the house. Police tape was visible around the front door and in the yard. I swallowed a dry nothing that prickled my throat. "Honey, what happened to all the pictures?" I yelled up the stairs. No response. "Fun's over, babe. We need to get going, okay? And you really need to teach me how you threw your voice like that." More silence. "I'm serious. Let's get this day over with and behind us." "Daddy, I think Mom's getting mad at you for real." This time it was my daughter's voice that came from upstairs. Then I heard the horn of the car from the garage. A long and sustained blast of noise. A gear of realization clicked in my head, and I went to the kitchen door to look out. The car was still running. My daughter was still in the car by herself. She was slumped against the steering wheel, clouds of exhaust bubbling all around her. I stopped thinking and I started moving. I kicked at the kitchen door as hard as I could. Have you ever heard someone say that they were so worked up that they saw red? I can tell you it's not a metaphor. I assaulted that door and I waited for the crack of the wood around either the latch or the hinges, but there was neither. I kicked and I kicked as the adrenaline dumped into the system, and my senses became vivid with pure panic. The door wouldn't yield at all. My last kick threw me off balance, and I staggered backward and sideways against the wall. "Daddy!" I heard Lindsay's voice again over the blast of the car horn. From where I held myself up against the wall, I looked at my daughter through the glass of the door. I decided I could stand a mutilated arm if I could shatter one of the 9 small panes and reach down and unlock the garage door. It was as if the angels were smiling on me that day, because the door stop for the door to the garage was none other than an old brick. I snatched it with taut fingers and brought it to the pane closest to the door handle. I waited for the rain of glinting glass like razor blade snow, but they never came. There was no raucous singing of shattering. The glass taunted me without so much as a scratch. I paused for only a moment, too overloaded to believe what I was seeing. I rained a torrent of blows on that lower left pane. Nothing, no purchase. Snarling, I tried the other panes, and they were just as sturdy. Practically bulletproof, I started to see sparks in my field of view with my escalating panic. Lindsay! God damn it! Open the door! Open the garage door, Lindsay! I'm up here, Daddy! The words came from upstairs and they startled me somehow. My daughter wasn't upstairs. I could see her, swallowed up in poisonous vapors in the garage. I howled and sprinted to the front door. If I could just get outside, I'd find a way into the garage. And guess what? The front door was locked as well, just as supernaturally unmovable as the garage door. Well, this is beyond insane. This can't actually be happening. No. I began another kicking session against the front door. No! There was a sound of something cracking, and it wasn't the door frame. My ankle screamed at me, and I suddenly couldn't put my weight on it. I nearly fell over as the door suffered another barrage of kicks. Except I wasn't kicking it. Whatever was happening was taking place on the other side. Hello? I'm stuck inside my own house. My daughter's trapped in the garage. She's going to die if nobody opens that damn door out there. Hello? There was no answer. I tried looking through the slivers of the prismatic glass in the door. Something made them hard to see through. Then I was blinded by lights, flashing red and blue lights. Was it the cops? Part of me felt relief at the idea of the cops showing up. The other part of me didn't feel anything that made sense. I brushed it off. I tried shouting even louder. Hello? My daughter's trapped in the garage. Somebody please help. We know you're in there, so come out with your hands up, boomed an amplified voice. Daddy, I'm scared. Henry, you need to get up here, and now. I'm not kidding around. I craned my neck to look at the top of the stairs. The bedroom door was shut. Those voices. Daddy! Henry! Look, buddy, it'll go so much better for you if you just come out here. A high, tinny ringing began to swell in my skull that hurt my ears from the inside out, hurt the back of my eyes. I twisted the front door again with the expected results. I looked back upstairs. I finally began hobbling toward the stairs, my ankle blaring like the car horn in the garage. What the hell is all the noise, Henry? I can barely hear myself think up here. The photos in the wall beside the stairs weren't just newsprint photos anymore. They were full newspaper pages. The pictures were all of the house, of my wife, of our daughter, of me. There were large and ominous headlines, but I couldn't read them. Either the letters were out of sequence, or my brain wasn't reading them right. And then I saw a photo of Uncle Ron. Actually, I saw several photos of Uncle Ron. I tried to read the print surrounding them, but it too was incomprehensible. I felt lightheaded and could feel the breath of the grinning, laughing hyena of madness that were nipping at my ankles. I continued my unsteady climbing of the stairs. At this point, all I wanted was that somehow, someway, my daughter was in fact upstairs, no matter how crazy the explanation for what I was seeing and hearing. If she could just be okay, if my wife could just be okay with her. I crested the stairs. My wife and my daughter were both talking over each other, and their voices were coming from one door, our bedroom door. I touched the doorknob, and all felt silent at once. The car horn, the police outside, my family. I pushed the door open. Our bed was white as per usual, but it looked like someone had spilled a bucket of the ugliest deep red paint all over it. My wife was in her eggshell blue nightie, and she was in the final movement of pulling the blankets over something. She was splattered with an ugly red, a chocolate red, head to toe. Her hair was flattened with the weight of it. She looked at me with her electric eyes and pressed a single finger to her lips. Shh! The baby is sleeping finally. She didn't prevent me from coming over to the head of the bed and pulling the covers back. There lay Lindsay, drenched in blood to a degree that exceeded the imagination. She clutched her own entrails, twisting them the way a sleeping child might do in their blanket. Kate, my wife, lay beside her, even though she was also standing beside me. "Honey," I wheezed. "I think I'm coming unglued. I think I'm—" She put one hand on my shoulder and pointed to the far corner of the bed beside her copy that I hadn't pulled back yet. I threw her a look, telling her I didn't want any more of this. She merely nodded to the bed. I tugged the full length of the sodden blanket, weighted down with blood, and there was a third body. It was me. The way I'd looked this morning before I showered and got dressed. My stomach was cut wide open, and I bled all over my side of the bed. "Hands up!" yelled a policeman they had not seen or heard enter the bedroom. His service pistol was aimed right at me, and my hands indeed went up. And somehow that still wasn't quite what he wanted. The crack of the pistol sounded 3 times, and I felt and heard 3 wet thumps in my body. I fell backward as the ground left my feet. Someone was slapping my face. "Ronald! Ron, can you hear me?" I opened my eyes and found myself inches from the face of a man with a white and closely cropped beard and very thick glasses. He looked irritated. I was in a chair. I was at a table where there were several dolls. Most of them were Barbies that were in various stages of abuse and neglect, missing limbs, scribbled on with marker and pen. 3 of them were crammed into a bed, while 2 Barbies stood beside it. A disproportionately sized police officer action figure stood at the foot of the bed. "You fell asleep, Ron," the man said flatly. Then he scribbled something onto a clipboard. My mouth wagged and my voice fired off gently. "Beg your pardon," the man said. "My name's Henry." "Of course it is," he grumbled. He walked over to a door with a narrow opening at his eye level and nodded to someone on the other side. 2 large men in white uniforms entered and lifted me out of the chair like an oversized and very stiff doll. They carried me out into a hallway that was whiter than white. The long tubular lights overhead hurt to look at. I couldn't even keep my eyes open. Then I was thrown onto the floor and there was the sound of a door shutting behind me. The light in there was more bearable. It was small, too small. It was a single light bulb in what looked like a mason jar in a metal cage. The walls were covered with newspapers. The detail made me shiver. This must have been the point where my mind decided it couldn't take any more. I curled into a ball like a pill bug and fell into a sleep that was a perfect shutdown of all thought. When I awoke, I lay motionless for as long as possible, waiting for something to happen so I wouldn't have to do anything. When I finally opened my eyes, the very first thing I saw was the bold headline of one newspaper page on the wall. Murder. The myriad pages surrounding it, like mangy feathers, had similar grim headlines. I didn't have to look at the photos closely to recognize them as the newsprint pictures that had somehow replaced the pictures in my house, like a cancer. As I looked over the swell of information with glassy eyes, I finally saw it, next to the toilet in the saddest-looking corner of the room, a sink with a mirror over it. I hobbled over to it and gazed into the bottomless, dark eyes of Uncle Ron. Days passed, then weeks. I've done little more than lie in my moth-eaten bed and sleep, or sit on the edge of it for hours and stare at the floor. I stare at the floor because there aren't any newspaper pages on the floor. A few times, only a few, I've looked in that mirror again. Each time I looked, I expected to see Henry, me. But I see Uncle Ron. That man from before comes to see me once or twice a week. He gives me pills and asks me how they make me feel. I can smell the BS on his breath, and I cut to the chase each time. Look, what's really going on here? Really, my name is Henry. My wife's name is Kate. My daughter's name is Lindsay. We live at 534 Riverloft Circle Drive in Silver Key Crossing, Illinois. I've been paying the mortgage on that house for well over 16 years with blood, sweat, and tears. We were leaving for Uncle Ron's funeral one Saturday, and I talk and talk and talk. I tell the same story each time I see the same doctor. He makes notes that scrape and click on his clipboard, and then he leaves. Then he comes back. We repeat this little social ritual. I've started reading the newspaper pages, cluttering the walls of my room. Excuse me, my cell. I can only read them several paragraphs at a time. What they try to tell me is huge, and the connections I make to what I think I already know, well, these things are bigger than huge, bigger than my sanity. Today I looked in that mirror again. Still Uncle Ron's face. I sat down on the bed. That's still where I spend most of my time. I reviewed everything I know about Ron. I know I hate him. I know he gives me the creeps. I know I figured out he has the worst incest crush in my wife. There's nothing about the man I like. If there's anything I understand about the man, I don't want to admit it, don't want to think about it. I can't think of a single damn thing I have in common with Uncle Ron, except his face. I have Uncle Ron's face. The lab coat visits me, the newspaper pages, plastered all over my cell, the mirror next to my toilet. They all tell me the same thing. I don't want to face it, I can't. What I can piece together is that Ron had a fixation on his niece, Kate, for a long time. Like from when she was 11 or 12. Sick bastard. Over the years, he kept every shred of everything connected to her. Photos, scraps of hair, even clothes. Pencils from her school supplies that she had gnawed on. Then she met Henry when she was 17. They dated past high school, and their lives overlapped tightly, more than her life would ever tie up with Uncle Ron. He continued to hawk her, live for the little thrill of being near her when he gets close, like at family reunions. Henry started to sniff out the stink of his perversion. Ron tried to befriend Henry, to get him to relax a little bit, but no. Katie was a garden, and Henry was the wall protecting it. Ron tried to replicate the feeling with others, but it just wasn't the same. It wasn't a cheap thrill of a sick crush on your own relatives. It was Kate. Katie. She was special. Ron continued to collect. He didn't just go for things attached to Kate, but also things attached to Henry. He wanted to be Henry, this snake charmer of Kate's love. He wanted to be that man that had the key to Kate's heart. Ron collected pictures of the house, of the family, of Henry, as if it would all somehow, one day, allow him to switch bodies with the man. In a way, that happened when the medication began. After all, what would any good psychotherapist do when your patient is well over a decade, is steadily sinking into the mire of depression and insomnia and PTSD and anxiety and so forth and so on? Under the fog of psychotropics, Ron transmuted the dark artifacts of his scrapbooks into false memories until he believed he was Henry, until I believed I was Henry. When I'm not staring at the floor, I'm staring at my hands. These have to be Henry's hands. I remember vividly, clearly, seeing Henry's hands both grasp Kate's left hand as she proposed to her and slid a ring on her finger. It was Henry's hands, holding Kate's during countless slow dances. It was Henry's hands that massaged Kate's back, her shoulders, that wove magic on her skin during years of lovemaking. They couldn't be Ron's hands. Ron's hands took a sledgehammer to the front door of that house on 534 Riverloft Circle Drive. Ron's hands had swung the hammer against Henry's body until his ribcage was gravel and his insides began to bulge out of his ruptured flesh. Ron's hands that turned the hammer on Kate when she wouldn't stop throwing things and saying all those awful, hurtful things that stung Ron to his very soul and put a gun to the frail skull of the small part of him that loved her with all he had, and pulled the trigger without a second thought. Ron's hands that pull all three of them in bed together, mangled limbs, dislocated jaws, bodies beaten past all sense of order. Ron's hands that were put in handcuffs. Surely they were arresting the wrong person. It wasn't Ron. It was Henry. He was just trying to come home. He was trying to get the bad people out of his house. The people that didn't belong there. The people that were trying to take away his wife, his Kate. I stopped staring at my hands and glanced to a crooked wall clock. I guess I've been looking at my hands for a few hours. It can't be Ron. I hate Ron. I can't be Ron. I hate Ron. I can't be Ron. I hate Ron. I can't be Ron. I hate Ron.
When the lock on Unit 25 was broken, the other bidders groaned and rolled their eyes. The unit was a waste of time, and time is money. The auctioneer went through the motions of selling the unit. Rules were rules, after all. He couldn't skip it. As soon as the gate was lifted, the stench of moisture and soil assaulted our noses. From the initial view, there was nothing of value there. There was no reason for me to bid on it. Yet, for some reason, I still can't explain it. I did. At first, I dismissed it outright like the rest of them and waited. The auctioneer started the bidding at $200 to the chuckles of the crowd. The asking price plummeted to $50 after a minute of the auctioneer's rapid-fire offers. The inactivity broke at the $25 mark when a gentleman lifted his hand into the air. As the auctioneer began the count, this overwhelming certainty there was something valuable inside the unit hit me. On the second count, I outbid the man. He smirked and with a shrug showed he was out. At the count of 3, unit number 25 was mine, and I've regretted it ever since. Unit number 25 didn't stray far from my thoughts. There was no appeal to the other units, despite showing promising inventory to flip on eBay or Craigslist. There was an itch to get inside the unit, and it would drive me insane until it was scratched. When the auctions finished and it came time to pay, I threw the money at the cashier and ran back to the unit. Lifting the orange gate felt like scratching around the area of an itch, but not quite getting to the offending spot. In terms of monetary value, unit number 25 was a success. A Panasonic plasma television with an accompanying home theater system was hidden behind an old beige-colored couch covered in dark brown stains. My gamble paid off in spades. There were more values too, but most of it was junk. Pieces of a broken coffee table, a mattress covered in yellow stains, and a bunch of other useless trinkets. Checking through the creaking drawers of an old desk, I stumbled upon a notebook. It seemed to glow against the dim light in the unit. Sliding off the leather tie holding it shut, I felt a warmth flow through me from head to toe. It felt like bathing in a pool of freshly baked brownies. The single bulb lighting the unit brightened like tossing a log into a fire. My vision blurred. I stumbled over, feeling faint all of a sudden, and dropped the journal on the floor to catch myself on the desk. I slid to the cold and dusty floor. The journal sat open next to me. It had opened to a page, and the words caught my attention. Flipping back through the pages, I came to the first entry and read the following. Entry 1. Mrs. Wiselink lectured me today about disrupting my neighbor's peace and quiet. She went on this crazy tirade about hearing me arguing with someone last night. I wasn't home last night is what I would have said if I managed to sneak a sentence in between her endless rant. As soon as I started talking, she'd interrupt me, complaining about slamming doors and loud laughter echoing down the hallways from my apartment at all hours of the night. When I was finally able to tell her that I had slept at Brandy's apartment, the old hag frowned at me with that wrinkled, grizzled face of hers and shook her head. That's when she really lost her shit. She called me a smelly liar and warned me that if I didn't keep everything quiet and orderly, that my ass would be out on the street. I stated once again it wasn't me, and suggested she have a talk with the people in the apartment next to mine. Her brows furrowed and she looked confused. Without another word, the old woman snatched the rent check from my hand and slammed the door in my face. "Keep it quiet and orderly, right?" I wanted to shout through the door. There was one more issue I wanted to discuss, but she hadn't given me a chance. My theory is that there's a small leak behind the wall, and the wet wallpaper is scrunching up into it. I don't know. Going through the trouble of getting her back to the door wasn't worth it. She'd probably try to start up trouble with me over it since she'd got nothing better to do with her life than train her cat to piss in the toilet. I can't wait to leave this shithole and move in with Brandy. On the walk back to my apartment, I heard the next-door neighbors laughing it up through their door. With these paper-thin walls, it was like having a never-ending party hosted in my apartment. I don't know how many people live there. I guarantee not all of them are on the lease. It was probably a bunch of college kids lending keys out to all their friends and letting them crash there. They're continuously laughing, yelling, and talking to each other. I'm not even sure if they're speaking English half the time. I can't understand them. It's really irritating. I've knocked on their door a few times, but they never answer. I've slipped notes under their door only to have them returned to me. The nights where it is especially bad, I've banged on the walls and shouted for them to keep it down. Sometimes they comply. Most of the time, all I get from my troubles is more jeering laughter. I cannot wait to leave this shithole behind. Counting down the days until the lease is done. Entry 2. Today was the day from hell. This morning I couldn't find my house keys or cell phone. I had to lock myself out of my house and ask Wiselink to let me in later. It was the last person I wanted to speak with, but I couldn't leave my apartment door open. I hoped to God she'd be awake when I got off my shift. When I got into work, Warnett was standing right at the front of the door, smoking a cigarette, and looked at his watch. I was half an hour late. When I tried to apologize and explain what happened, he waved me off with the disapproving eye roll I've become accustomed to seeing from him lately. My sales numbers have plummeted the past 2 months, and Warnett was on the warpath about it. If it wasn't bad enough, every customer I tried to assist today seemed to be having a worse day than I was. Each person was more annoyed with me than the last. My best efforts to be friendly with them were met with even worse treatment. I considered the possibility that I was being pranked. The tip of the iceberg was this old guy that was looking for a GPS upgrade card. Somehow I just knew this one was going to be the worst. I told him in the most helpful way possible, "Sir, your GPS doesn't require an upgrade card." The old man exploded. He went from a kindly old man to a purple-faced, irate berserker in less than a second. A sneer twisted on his face. His eyes bulged from their sockets like they were going to pop from his skull. He bared his teeth at me like some rabid animal about to attack. He berated me on the floor, drawing the attention of everyone in the entire store. For a second, I thought he was going to try to kill me. "How dare you deceive me, you smelly little shit! Get me a fucking manager right now!" Warnett comes dashing over and screams at me to go to the break room that attends to the old man. My face was burning with embarrassment. I'd be more than happy to get off the sales floor away from all the prying eyes of every employee and customer in the building. A few minutes later, Warnett charged into the break room to take his turn berating me too. The old man told Warnett I had given him an attitude and lied to him about the GPS upgrade card. Then, instead of trying to further assist him, I pointed him in the direction of the automotive department and told him to find it himself. Warnett didn't even give me a chance to refute the old man's lies. He banished me into the warehouse, informing me that I was going to receive a disciplinary write-up. This, in combination with my sales numbers, was grounds for termination. It was complete and utter horseshit, and I couldn't do a damn thing about it. At the end of my shift, 2 of my coworkers told me they had received telephone calls from my number in the middle of the night. I told them it had been misplaced and it wasn't me. They both said no one spoke on the other end of the line. Both calls ended abruptly with a loud, high-pitched scream, and then silence. When they tried calling back, it would go straight to voicemail. I apologized and promised to take care of the problem. I called Verizon right away and asked customer service to disconnect the phone. They stuck me with some ridiculous fees, which I was forced into paying to shut the phone line down. Warnett then comes into the warehouse and sees me on the phone. He looks like he's about to lose it. He tells me he needs me to stay until closing. I agreed to the shift to avoid pissing him off any further. With a 12-hour shift ahead of me, I asked if I could take a half-hour break. Warnett responded, "You think you deserve more time off the clock than you've already taken today? Un-fucking-believable. You were late this morning. You royally pissed off that old man, too. You've used up all your breaks for today." The asshole turned around, leaving through the double doors back onto the sales floor. I didn't sell today. My dollars per hour generated were fucked. And I'd stayed until 11 o'clock at night. Starving and feeling like shit, the last thing I wanted to deal with was asking Mrs. Weisling to let me inside my own apartment. I'm falling asleep right now. But I'll say, knocking on her door and asking her to help me went about as pleasant as having someone kick me in the balls with steel-toed boots half a dozen times. I need a new apartment. I need a new job. I need a new life. Fuck this shit. Entry 3. Murphy's Law is a bitch. Someone broke into my apartment. Everything not bolted to the ground was broken into pieces and tossed around the apartment. Unless Spider-Man decided to turn to a life of breaking and entering, there was no way someone could have come in through the window. There were no signs of forced entry, at least none I could find. Nothing was stolen either. Everything was just demolished. With my phone still missing, I couldn't call the police. It hasn't turned up anywhere, and Verizon still hasn't deactivated it yet. More of my coworkers were getting phone calls now. That's another whole bag of shit I'm dealing with. I bolted over to the apartment next door and knocked. No one answered, despite hearing their roaring laughter in the hallway before I opened the door to my ransacked apartment. After 5 minutes of knocking and shouting it was an emergency, I gave up on them. Forced to ask Weisling to use her phone, I knocked on her door, and the hallway filled with their laughter again. What a bunch of dicks. Mrs. Weisling answered the door with the same sourpuss expression on her face as when I knocked on her door at 11:30 p.m. I told her about the break-in and asked if I could use her phone. The bitch actually seemed conflicted about it. I mean, for God's sake, she may not like me for whatever reason, but a phone call to the police isn't any skin off her back. She let me in after literally having to beg her. I'll never forget the smell of cat piss, musk, and cooking spices permeating the apartment. Breathing through my mouth was the only saving grace I had while speaking with the dispatcher. They said someone would be over immediately. It was the first time in days that someone had treated me like a human being. I nearly teared up at a display of basic human kindness. After hanging up, I turned to thank the old lady and was rewarded with the urge to vomit instead. She had sat down in a chair and spread eagle with no underwear on. What made it worse was she was in the middle of taking her teeth out of her mouth and putting them into a glass of water. "Thank you," I shouted, and ran out of there so fast I felt like I had teleported. When the officers arrived, they seemed bothered to be there. They didn't seem to care about anything I said beyond getting the information they needed to fill out their paperwork. Both of them kept clearing their throats and making these sour-looking faces as if they smelled something rotten in the air. Mrs. Weisling made it worse by coming to my apartment. She gasped and began howling about the carpet being filthy. I had no idea what she was talking about until I looked over her shoulder and saw muddy footprints smeared across the carpet. Wasn't going to be my problem once I left, so I didn't even bother chasing the old bitch around trying to get it fixed. The footprints hadn't been there when I first came in. It made no sense. In the time that I had been out, someone must have snuck back inside. Instinct told me it was the neighbors since they were the only ones around. They had broken in. It was the only explanation. My thoughts were interrupted by Mrs. Weisling's insistence that I pay for new carpets since I was too stupid to lock my doors before I went out. Lucky for her, the policemen were there. Otherwise, I may have strangled her. We looked over the apartment and nothing was missing. Weisling looked inside from the doorway and scoffed at me. She huffed and puffed so much about the muddy carpets that I considered actually punching her in the face. The police officers finished their report and looked happy to leave the apartment to ask the neighbors if anyone had heard anything. Most of the other tenants in the building weren't home during the day. The ones who were home said they hadn't heard anything. They knocked on my neighbor's door and no one answered. This is where the shit got weird. Weisling told them not to bother knocking on that door since no one lived there. "Lady, you are freaking senile!" burst out of my mouth in an instant. All eyes turned to me once again. Weisling looked like she was about to have a stroke. The officers looked at me like someone looked at dog shit they'd stepped in. It was like work all over again. I apologized right away and told them it was the stress. One of the officers coldly asked me to sign my statement and left without an additional word. Weisling stood at the door, shook her head, and said something under her breath before leaving. I could have sworn it was the word psycho. I slammed the door as they left and slumped against the door, slowly letting myself fall to the ground, and bawled my eyes out. Once I stopped sobbing, I dragged myself over to the refrigerator for a beer. The craving to have one was so bad I could taste it. When I pulled the door open, the hinges moaned, and the door crashed to the floor. A disaster of beer, food, and condiments mixed with glass covered the floor. There was nothing else to do but laugh. The neighbors thought it was okay to join me. I wanted to slam my fists into the walls and tell them to shut up. But I didn't have the energy. Suddenly, a scream rang out on their side. It was unintelligible, but no one made a sound after. I welcomed the silence. I couldn't stand to be there for another minute. The safety of my home was compromised. There was no comfort here anymore. Brandy was my only option. She was surprised to see me when I showed up at her apartment. She looked very well put together, like she was about to go out on a date or something. I asked if she had plans for the night and told her about my apartment. She said she was going to see some friends for dinner, but she could cancel. I could tell she was annoyed. Her behavior toward me the rest of the night was cold and distant. She spent the majority of her time texting. When I tried to make conversation, all I got were one-word answers. I didn't have the energy to see what was wrong. I didn't want to piss her off either. It took a long time for me to fall asleep. Each time I closed my eyes, images of my ruined apartment flashed before me. I muffled my cries with a pillow so I wouldn't wake Brandy. I really fucking hate my life. Entry 4. I'm so happy to be back in my apartment. If I had to stay with Brandy another day, I think I would have choked her to death in her sleep. It's perplexing because everything started off so nicely between us. We awoke together, made breakfast, went to work, came home to each other's company. After the third day, things got weird. Brandy would get annoyed with me for no reason and start fights. She even complained that I smelled like milk that had gone bad, or Something fucking juvenile like that. I tried to defuse the situation and she would lay into me with whatever was on her mind. By the time I left her place, my desire to be with her was gone. We'll be breaking up soon. This whole experience opened my eyes to who she truly was. I don't want to be with someone who treats their significant other as badly as she treated me. I couldn't take the abuse anymore and came back here despite feeling unsafe. As soon as I opened the door, the smell of rancid pickles, old beer, and olive juice stung my nostrils. My first order of business was to clean the place. It took almost an entire day to get it back into tolerable conditions. The only good news to report so far is that my renter's insurance covered a good portion of the items that had been broken. Strangely, the whole process went without a hitch. The gentleman on the phone was pleasant and helpful. Nothing like Verizon. All I needed to do was take an inventory of the broken items along with a copy of the police report and wait for the check to arrive. It was nice to finally have someone treating me like a person again. It was still connected somehow after being reassured several times that it was turned off by Verizon. The complaints at work about me calling everyone were getting out of hand. No one gave me the benefit of the doubt anymore. Everyone seemed incredibly hostile to me, and even confronted me about some horrible threats I'd made against them. I flipped the fuck out on a couple of customer service reps for lying to me. They passed me to a manager who treated me kindly and assured me that they were going to resolve the situation. He even offered to credit my account for the weeks that my phone had still been activated. The manager was helpful. I still reamed him out as someone needed to be held responsible and face the consequences of their ineptitude. The only thing the manager could say was the phone was disconnected from the first day I reported it. I calmly let him know, if one more person tells me about obscene phone calls coming from my number, I will fly to whatever godforsaken shithole he lived in and murder his entire family in front of him. He cursed me in whatever gibberish language he spoke and hung up the phone. The neighbors are still at it. I thought about calling the police on them, but reconsidered seeing how those pig shits treated me the last time. Those fuckers never sleep. Banging on the walls and yelling at them to shut their traps doesn't work. One of these days, I'm going to get a sledgehammer and break down the barrier between us so they have no place to go. I'll hit it right in the middle of the stupid fucking spot on the wall. I can't miss it now. It's huge. Wiselink is going to take my entire deposit. Maybe the sledgehammer will change her mind when the time comes. I've knocked on the neighbor's door and they don't answer. I challenge them to come out and fight me. I feel their eyes on me through the peephole. They jiggle behind the door. All the gods in human history won't be able to save them if I ever catch them outside the apartment. Now that I think about it, I wouldn't know what they look like even if I did see them. I've never seen their faces. They could walk right by me on the street and I wouldn't know. They knew who I was. We could be in the same elevator, street, or walkways, and I'd be the one not knowing it was them. They could come home and tell their little friends about the idiot next-door dumbass not knowing. The thought simultaneously pissed me off and freaked me out. Work is intolerable. My co-workers seem to be actively avoiding me. I've caught girls spraying perfume into the air where I'd been standing or in the break room after I left. Customers aren't approaching me for help either. I get paid regardless of my sales, so that's fine by me. Warnett has been on my case about my numbers. Same shit. Different day. Fuck 'em all. Entry 5. I got fired today. Warnett canned me for threatening and harassing my co-workers over the phone. I explained to the overpaid, self-righteous asshole in the simplest of words that I didn't have a phone with which to make these calls, hence, I am not at fault. He turned to his computer and clicked the mouse twice. My voice came out over the speakers of his computer. In the shock of the moment, I didn't really pay attention to what my voice actually said. I know the word cunt was mentioned a lot. One particular part sticks out where I threatened to titty fuck an overweight male co-worker until my cock could penetrate his heart through his rib cage. Otherwise, I don't remember exactly what was said. What I do remember was actually in the background of the recording. It was laughter, hooting and hollering with each vile word that spewed from the recording. The recording finished with a high-pitched shriek, and the line went dead. Ornette's voice pulled me from the shock and utter insanity of the situation. He droned on about how the recordings had been forwarded to Human Resources after several employees came forward, refusing to work if I was still employed with the company. He said I should be thankful they weren't going to get the police involved, as if he was doing me some sort of favor. It was Human Resources and corporate, avoiding the additional paperwork and the possibility of litigation. Everyone was probably convinced not to press charges against me. Ornette handed me a termination notice with a shit-eating grin plastered across his acne-cratered face. I've never seen a man jump as high as he did when my fist slammed against his desk. It scared me too. He tensed up and went quiet, the grin replaced with full, wide-eyed fear. Holding the arms of my chair in a vice-like grip stopped me from reaching over the table and throwing a stapler into his face. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. Everything was red. The words coming from my mouth didn't feel like mine. There were disdain and malice in them. They made my stomach churn. It felt disgusting. Each syllable was like fecal matter and pus. I told him to expect Human Resources to take a closer look at his management decisions. Egregious amounts of time were spent outside, smoking with his favorite employees. Time theft was a severe offense to my former employer. Corporate didn't take kindly to wasted time. There was also the matter of his infamous out-of-the-box deals, going to his best customers who also were related to him. The percentage of off-on items was equivalent to stealing. There was also a recent hire receiving promotions over veteran employees. The appropriateness of their relationship outside of work may have had something to do with the promotion. Warnett's face was like a cooked lobster. He didn't even respond. He picked up the phone and had our loss prevention department escort me out of the building. It was the overweight co-worker I'd threatened in the recording. As he tossed me out of the building, a laugh escaped my throat. It turned into a full-blown laughing fit. Something in me snapped. I cursed at the customers and my former co-workers who stared at me with disgust. I told them they needed to take their business elsewhere since the company only hires smelly, crazy people that harass and threaten their co-workers. I don't have a job anymore. I don't have any friends. I have nothing in the world holding me back anymore. It feels fucking great. Entry 6. I've been on a short fuse lately. Everyone gives me shit all the time, and I stand by taking it like a little bitch. Well, those days are done and over. I'm nobody's doormat. No one walks on me anymore. They'll find out what happens when they fuck with me. Too many people for far too long treated me like nothing. It stops here and now. Mrs. Wiselink learned her lesson today. I paid the old crotch-rotted cunt her rent money and told her I was done with the apartment at the end of the month. With no job and no opportunities available to me, I couldn't afford to stay there any longer. As I told her what happened, there was fear in her eyes. She told me to lower my voice, and I told her I wasn't yelling. I must have been, because she nodded and flashed me a fake smile. She was trying not to breathe. I asked if she smelled something bad. She shook her head no. I demanded she evict the neighbors because I was going to strangle them to death with their intestines if she didn't. She smiled and nodded at me while closing her door. She didn't slam it in my face again. Oh, I would have throttled her if she did. I could tell she was afraid of me. I liked it. I liked it a lot. Entry 7. Brandy showed up today for the infamous talk. She wanted to end our relationship, saying that I was the one that changed into a different person. My blood boiled worse than when I fought with Warnett. She started all the fights. She was the one who changed for the worse. It was her fault. I didn't want to be around her. She knew her reasoning was bullshit. In the final moments of our relationship, she confirmed at the top of her lungs she'd been fucking several other guys while she was with me. The reaction from our neighbors was mixed. Half of them laughed hysterically, and the other half booed and jeered. They were our studio audience, and they wanted to be entertained. Her onslaught of insults didn't stop there. She called me a pathetic excuse for a man. She said everyone walked all over me and I never stood up for myself. I was weak, I was pathetic, and she could do much better than me. Shit like that. The neighbors hooted and hollered like never before. They were getting a colossal shit kick out of all of it. Then everything went red. My memory of what happened is hazy at best. A table lamp found itself in my hand. I don't remember reaching for it. I flung it at the wall, not seeing Brandy was standing there. It was like she disappeared for a minute and reappeared in the path of the flying object. Brandy dodged it before it shattered against the wall right behind her. If she hadn't ducked in time, it would have nailed her right in that slutty face. Oh, the neighbors hollered. A spot on the wall rippled like a pond. She didn't hear them. She also didn't see the spot. That bitch was lying to me. She must have known the neighbors. She was probably fucking all of them. It enraged me, until I realized what was happening. Brandy rose from the ground with her hands held out in front of her in surrender, then scrambled for the front door. Her cries were drowned out by the rigorous applause of the neighbors. The apartment shook. Everything went silent after. The only sound I heard was the air conditioner in the background. Then there was a single ha-ha from the next door. I spent the next 20 minutes throwing everything in my apartment against the spot on the wall. When there was nothing left, kicks and punches sufficed. Nothing in the world was going to keep me from getting inside their apartment and killing them all, except collapsing onto the floor in a heap of misery and exhaustion. I shouldn't have done that. I felt like I needed to apologize to Brandy for throwing the lamp at her. I wanted to tell her how sorry I was. Vomit rose in the back of my throat. My thoughts aren't mine. I'm not like this at all. Brandy was right. I'm not me anymore. Entry 8. This heat is unbearable. The fever is much worse. Nothing breaks it. Haven't slept in days. Insane nightmares. I'm a sweat pool. I don't remember anything. It feels like there are people in here. They whisper to each other in hushed voices. My heart's racing. I am terrified. I'm helpless. They scream at me, then each other. Violent threats, laughter, snickering. They sound like Mornette, no balls, brandy, bitch, wise link, denture face. They sound like me. I am screaming. Or is it them? Wiselink tells me to stop screaming. It's annoying the neighbors. Got him, Laffy Taffy assholes. It's annoying her too. She says there aren't any neighbors. The apartment is empty. Dumbass. I don't believe her. They're loud. So loud. She wants me out. I don't appreciate it. Look at the hole. I live in there. People live in there. They stand by my bed. I reach to touch them. They aren't there. Entry 9. I found my phone. Neighbors had it. They took pictures. Brandy's body, twisted, unfathomable directions at the bottom of the stairs. Smile. Swipe left. Wiselink's face is blue. The cat licked crusted food off her face. Her toothless mouth hung open. Her teeth were in her mouth. Giggles. Swipe left. Ornette's face is burned. The steering wheel is jammed into his abdomen. He looked surprised. Ta-da! Phone shuts off. Shadows surround them. The shadows surround me. The voices laugh. The voices scream. No sleep. No dreams. The building is shaking. The neighbors are in the hole. Oh, I'm burning up. Nope, I'm cold again. Oh, they're laughing again. I'm laughing with them. The rest of the pages were unintelligible. Whoever wrote the journal tried to continue. His writing turned to scribbles, and the sheets were stained with black smudges. 2 hours has passed. Everyone from the auction was already gone, leaving me in the eerie silence of the storage building. It was time to head home. A conversation with my wife over the phone made the ride pass quickly. I needed someone to talk to. I didn't want to think about the madness of the journal. We talked about the stuff inside unit number 25, save for the journal and its insane ramblings. My wife spooks pretty easy when it comes to things like that. She'd feel uneasy keeping the belongings inside our house. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. We needed the cash. When I arrived home, I found my wife in the kitchen preparing our dinner. For the past 20 years, when I got home, the first thing I did was find my wife and give her a kiss. In 20 years, she never rejected me. She was always happy to see me and was our thing. Walking into the kitchen to say hello, she turned in my direction, and a frown stretched across her lips. I thought nothing of it until she turned her face away from me in disgust. She brought her hand to her nose and pushed me away from her, complaining that I smelled like rancid milk.
Prologue. Joey slowly opened her eyes. Tingles of numbing sensations prickled throughout her body. Not being able to focus on any one thought, she attempted to squint through the foggy, blurred vision at what she could make out. The color green was predominant, along with hues of blue, brown, and dark black. She lay still as her head pounded with each pulse of unrelenting, throbbing aches. Joey struggled, unable to remember or recognize any of the surroundings she now felt encased. Not the smells, the sounds, not anything. Everything appeared and felt entirely unfamiliar. Suddenly, the crippling pain washed across her body in a crashing wave. It started in her legs, then oddly moved calmly past her torso, but again raged throughout both arms. Shackled with sharp attacks of gripping stings, Joey was paralyzed, lacking the mobility to move her body much at all. Wave after wave of shock rolled through her mind and body as she attempted to cry out. It was as if she were being stretched and pulled by the wooden horse, an ancient Roman rack used to torture prisoners by stretching them until their joints would dislocate. Without warning, Joey's ears became keenly aware to a strange whirring sound. She wasn't sure where the odd-pitched noise came from, but it pierced through her agonizing pain, giving her sudden focus. She tried calming herself, talking aloud as if it would help her frightened state of mind to slow her quick breathing. The high-pitched squeal lulled her concentration away from everything else except the tone. It was fading, slowly morphing into a slowing but rhythmic string of clicks. A pattern with cadence became weaker and slower. She knew she was going to go black any minute. And then, she was out. The wheel mounted between the bent front forks of the Harley FLH slowly wound down, momentum losing its battle to keep spinning as the bike lay in a crumpled mass of metal and splintered wood. The steel skeleton mortally wounded near the tree it had just made fatal contact with. A large owl with a massive wingspan had just dropped from a limb overhanging the highway, flying into Travis's neck and shoulder as he and Joey leaned tightly into the hairpin corner. The bird's contact forced Travis to veer onto the shoulder, making his Harley's tires skid out of control in the loose gravel before hitting the unavoidable hole in the asphalt. The sudden slime jar caused the bike to shoot off the highway, becoming airborne into the tree-lined forest that made the road such a beautiful ride. Both Travis and Joey were thrown after careening into the tree trunk some 20 feet down the embankment from the road's edge. The large, dark-winged fowl was now twisted into the metal mess. Blood, goo, and feathers now smeared all over the chrome and crumpled black shiny painted pride and joy. Joey lay unconscious several feet to the right from where she was thrown. The motorcycle, just behind her body, which lay somewhat hidden in the grass and brush. Her fiancé Travis's limp body lay decapitated, his head having been rolled several feet away and now rested against a brown boulder. Travis's oddly perched face lay bloody and battered, his eyes frozen open in a blank hollowness while his stare gazed back as if he were looking into the world from another dimension. Thick, long black hair on the now detached skull was covered with dirt and pine needles, making it an odd, eclectic mix of things melded together that don't belong as one. An eerie sight that would certainly haunt anyone upon walking up and witnessing the macabre scene. His body lay several feet back, twisted into a form no human should ever be found. He had obviously died instantly, most likely never realizing what happened. The twisty mountain road was not usually well traveled, but fortunately for Joey, who still lay broken but alive, an old man in a pickup truck not far behind them witnessed the entire accident. He immediately dialed 911. Help arrived just in time to save the young blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman from bleeding out. She had sustained massive fractures and contusions, leading her to code 3 times before the ambulance arrived at the Redwood Memorial Hospital emergency room, southwest of San Jose in Santa Cruz. Joey would live, but her real battle now lies ahead. A long and continuous war of overcoming and conquering the hidden enemy lying within, patiently in wait, to live again and hunt. Chapter 1. Joey, 4 years after the accident. Life was no longer easy. I often wondered what I'd done to piss off the big man upstairs. I'd suffered through 11 surgeries in just over 4 years since the late afternoon ride that not only stole my lover and future, but was still trying to steal my desire to live through recovery. The very word recovery makes me laugh. Does one ever really recover from a fucking life-stealing event like the one I was given? I still had more surgeries to go through. The only thing I now looked forward to was the measured pain of receiving new inked artwork that aided in covering the ugly memories of surgical markings left deep in my body from the surgeons. At least the pain of being tattooed was something I held control over. I got to choose when, where, and what was to be stippled into my skin instead of some surgeon's knife leaving a trail of tissue unnaturally sewn back together. Yes, I held resentment. My life had been going perfect. I was gorgeous and had a great guy who loved and cared for me. Great rides together all over California and Oregon, wherever we damn well wanted to go. Travis held a great job which afforded us to do anything we wanted, and then one goddamned western screech owl protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and my life and future vanished, gone in an instant. And to think I love nature, birds, reptiles, and I love everything natural. But no longer any fucking owls. Those goddamn creatures can burn in hell. I am alive, though, and I'm strong-willed. I'm no fucking quitter. I survived for a reason. Travis, I miss you, babe. You were a good man, and I will see you again and ride that ride together forever. I thought to myself as I lifted my highball glass of Jameson on the rocks to the framed picture of the two of us on his scooter named Blackie. A tinge of pain began in the crook of my neck and shot down my arm. It was as if the devil were needling me of what he had stolen away, but no broken neck or spine injuries could stop me now. Recovery? Fuck it. I'm on a mission now. No need to be upset at the guys at work for calling me a cyborg. I've been recreated and tweaked for a purpose. I just needed to find out what that purpose is. After dialing Royal Ink, I asked for Matt, my tattooist. Hey Matty, what's up? Yeah, I think my scar can handle it now. You know I need the ink pain for therapy, right? I smiled as he chuckled. You've already done about 60% of my body and I've never so much as flinched or cried like a little bitch yet. You know I can handle it. Okay, next Friday it is. See you then, sweetheart. I pulled my tank top up, revealing yet another surgical scar. I looked at Matt as he studied the long, rough patchwork on my side. Damn, Joey. Matt ran his fingers over the spot of the latest incision. I think you're in for some real therapeutic, discomfort here. Ribs are a bit touchy. I know you're one tough ninja warrior, but if this sketch of your quote is what you are wanting, what doesn't kill me only makes me stronger, he continued to lightly trail his fingers back and forth over the long scar tissue. This one may make it difficult for you to prove that tough ninja shit. All solid dark blacks and grays, huh? You are either very brave or very self-penitent. Give me your darkest ink, Matty. No quote ever fit truer with me than this one, sweetie. You are a different brand of woman, Joey. Your daddy named you right, Miss Tommy Boy. Mac grinned an evil grin. Damn straight, Matty. You can't be a girly girl when your daddy names you Joey. Kind of like Johnny Cash and a boy named Sue. How do you do? Now, you're gonna die. Joey smiled a huge grin before the two busted into laughter. I knew Matt shouldn't have been amazed when I sat through the 6-hour session without batting an eye or squeezing back a tear. He knew I was one tough cookie, and I knew he appreciated that. Crying, puking girly girls were not exactly welcome in his shop. That's why the sign over his chair boldly read, "Hike up your big girl undies and shut the fuck up." I stood in front of the mirror admiring yet another addition to the visual story of my journey. Yep. Part of the recovery process. I knew my daddy was looking down on me with a smile of self-pride. After all, he had made me who I was, and this world wasn't even close to tough enough to break me. Not today, Not tomorrow, never. Semper Fidelis, always faithful. Chapter 2. Dreams and Aberration. Waking up and sensing it was still dark outside, I felt an awkward feeling of a stalking nature. Not as if I were the one being hunted, but the tension and anxiety of being the lurker or shadow in the darkness. One part of me felt ashamed or contrite for this odd feeling, yet on the flip side, I felt pride in my stealth and awareness of my prey. My heart was racing. I could feel the pulse in my fingertips. I felt power. I found this sensation exhilarating, yet very awkward and uncomfortable for some reason. Who or what had I been stalking? In my dream, I'd felt myself breathing in mechanical rhythms as if my body were growling a low, inaudible purr of anticipated exhilaration. I was like an animal with the hunger for another's lifeblood, inquisitive of the urge to kill, not out of any need or self-preservation, but for one of pleasure and discovery. I laid as still as a deer, much like my eyesight locked into the headlights of a vehicle careening at me at a high rate of speed. I've never felt this way before. Never. Nary a flinch from a muscle. For the first time in my life, through all the hardship and tragedy I've endured, I feel something inside I've never experienced before. True fear. I felt its danger. I felt dangerous. Granted, it is mixed with an overwhelming taste of intense excitement, but fear is a definite strain within this new emotion I had never dealt with. My senses homed in. I heard things clearer with focus, and my visual sight held more definition. I was like a cat. Not some lazy fat house cat, but a leopard or panther. A sensation of being predatorial. I could smell a cologne I'd not recognized. It wasn't eternity. That was Travis's signature scent that always heightened my sexual desires. This aroma was something more arrogant. It was almost assaulting in the way it infiltrated my nostrils. It was pissing me the fuck off, filling me with an agitated anger not present mere seconds ago. My eyes sharpened, and the dark silhouette that moments earlier was hidden in the shadows now stood out as if I were wearing military-grade night vision goggles. This figure now cleared into a legible face. He was a handsome young man. I don't know why or what made that thought pop into my mind, but it did, and I couldn't tuck it back into the recess of the drawer inside my mind. The sentence rolled across my mental tongue as clear as glass. It's too bad I must stab the life out of such a cute young college boy. And mentally, that is exactly what I did. Of course, I played with the internal picture of the act inside my brain like a cat would toy with a helpless trapped rodent. He was easily lured into a false sense of security by my hot, moist, and fleshy body. I almost felt bad he never saw it coming. He was so anxious to get me naked and romp, he never optioned in his young mind that a female such as me could be a dangerous and fatal threat. A Trojan horse hiding within a woman that harbored needs of stealing life from a man. Not his possessions, but his life itself. The act of doing so had been beautiful, but hideous all at once. The bed, now splattered with collecting pools of the crimson-red liquid that moments earlier sustained Josh's life, now left his eyes silently stilled to an uncontrolled quiver as life slipped from his body. He hadn't owned enough time to show a look of fright. Just as his face shined full of the pleasure that I was giving him, my fingers reached for the blade stashed in the sheets wadded up behind me. I went crazy, energetic, and wild as I slashed at him with the steel-serrated blade. The thump of the bass from the song blasting from his stereo charged me with the rhythm I stabbed at his heart. The act felt like I imagined a famous painter would enjoy as he wielded his painter's brush, bristles full of the bright red paint as it sliced through the air, artistically filling the white canvas with broad strokes of his blood-red anguish. When my painting was finished, I collapsed, void of all the energy seconds earlier controlled me. Now completely spent, breathing heavily and working at comprehending what I had just done. I moved in close and looked into his open eyes as they stared back empty but wide open for me to inspect. Void of life, yet a tiny gleam of the hallway sconce's light reflecting brightly in his now dark and dead pupils. Fuck! What had I done? Confused, my lips, which formed a straight line of shock and question, suddenly turned up into a Cheshire cat's grin. I lifted my aching arched back from the bent-over position I'd been sitting on him in. I took a moment to admire my first work of art, smearing the fresh blood against my thighs and palms. As I leaned forward, his manhood fell away from me, and I took note of the awareness. A fucking masterpiece! I knew instantly I would have to paint again. A new thirst that could only be quenched by replication leading to perfection. I climbed off my victim's now flaccid, moist body and rolled over onto my back. I attempted to relive the moment as if I could hit rewind on a VCR and then push play, but instead my eyes slid up under my eyelids, too empty to complete the thought. I laid still like that deer in headlights beside the cooling body I'd just ravaged and then stolen its life without hesitation nor reason. I quietly fell into the deepest and pain-free sleep I'd enjoyed in a long, long time. Recovery was coming along grandly. Chapter 3. Waking Up Emotions of Consequence. My bedroom window was positioned where the rising sun filled its glass pane every morning. The curtains were light and airy enough to quell the harshness of its brightest beams without entirely blocking the early rays allowed in to wake me with casual brightening light. After all, I held no real schedule anymore. The surgeries and recovery times now robbed me of my job. Thankfully, my father had not only raised me to be strong and fit to care for myself, but he had also left a gracious life insurance payoff. My schedule was now reduced to recouping from one surgery until the next, tattoo therapy from my artist Maddie in between, and being hospitable to those in the neighborhood who were less fortunate than I. Watching crime TV at any hour I wanted was almost always on my schedule of killing time. Killing time. I laughed at my thought and use of the phrase. I brushed the night crust from my eyes and rolled over to my side, expecting to see Josh's cold, stiff body lying beside me. No panic within, just realizing in the moment that I had made no plan of how to dispose of his body. I looked over with slight hesitation. My mouth suddenly fell open without refrain. Where the fuck was his body? Chapter 4. Internal Nagging Questions. Have you ever thought or wondered for the slightest of a second that maybe, just maybe, something foreign was inside your body? Something that in some way entered your bloodstream undetected and then began invading, attempting to orchestrate a coup, dissecting your defenses and interpreting your responses so it could counter your reactions? Something that doesn't belong nor fit with your previous, I don't know, thoughts and insides? Some would say I've introduced foreign substance into my body in the form of poisonous inks every time I come out of royal ink. They would argue Matt's artwork inlaid just under the surface of my skin is a voluntary risk of foreign invasion. While this may be true, I don't believe the colored inks could slowly overtake my thoughts and render me powerless in the decisions I attempt to make. To that, I call BS. They are just appended in the choices I make. I used to think that just one tat would be all I'd ever want. I could have been satisfied with that first little Irish knotted cross on my ankle, thinking it would suffice my inquisitiveness of the process. But that was before through going countless operations to put my broken body back together. Before the memories that those deep wounding scars kept reminding me of, goading me into recollections of how broken I quickly became after what I'd lost in the flutter of that fucking owl's flight into our path. I need the ink to help hide those memories so I can rebuild myself to the woman I once was, the one I long to be again. An existence without people seeing my torn and re-sewn flesh. Scars that lead them to ask stupid questions. It's my battle, goddammit, not yours. None of your prying business. Get in my way and I'll make damn sure you live to regret it. Don't tread on me or mine. I fell back into the chair. I don't know where this rising steam comes from anymore. I was once very peaceful, filled with love and wonder of the world around me. Now I fight despising it. Something is inside me and taking residence within, invading my defenses, attempting to conquer what was once mine, stealing pieces of me bit by bit. My power, my desires. I sat up straight, finding myself gasping for the air that normally came easy to breathe in naturally. If I could just chill the hell out. What is happening to me? I question myself. Who am I morphing into? This is not who I am, not what I want. I yell aloud at the top of my lungs while I search the mirror hanging on the wall at the foot of my bed. Instantly, tears blur my vision of myself. The colors of the artwork covering my body begin to swallow the image of the girl that is staring back at me. It's as if I now am merely the screen to display a moving picture reel. I remember a phrase my grandma used to tell me when she suffered pain or distress from some tragedy she faced. She would look into the heavens outside from the front porch. The swing she sat on would sway back and forth to a melody only she could hear. My sweet grandma would shake her head and repeat the same quote over and over. Lord God Almighty, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. I believed her. After all, my grandma never told a lie for as long as she lived. She wasn't capable of it. But today, as I sit in my bed staring at myself, trying to picture myself at that tender young age, the age she would see me as way back then, I believe I'm the exception that broke the rule. I don't feel this strange internal war against my soul will ever pass. It's too raging. I'm afraid my soul will instead be crucified, burnt at the stake like Joan of Arc, the painful flames licking at the soles of my feet as I cry out for mercy. And at the weakest moment, I'm engulfed in this pathetic pity party. That ruthless fucking Cheshire cat grin begins turning up at each corner of my mouth. Yes, whatever is inside me was back, and I hold no control over it. But then again, a minute later, I don't care. All I want is to satisfy its hunger once more. But this time, for real. Not just in the imagination given to me as I sleep. I feel the hunger and desire to experience the intensity and taste the salt of another human's blood. Feed the invader's desire to witness the carnage I am capable of. I hold no clue where this entity within has come from, but I kneel in submission. Tonight, the hunt will begin. My heart unrelentingly rages once more with the anticipation equal to the hunger of the masses starving within a third world country. Their collective agony of awaiting the day's rations to quell those pangs of hunger one moment longer. The crazy thing, last week, I felt none of this. That's how quick this thing has swallowed me up. I'm like Jonah and the whale. The only difference? I have no idea what the fuck this internal whale is. This alien that has engulfed me and made me theirs. Chapter 5. Reflections. I miss you, Travis. I took flowers to your gravesite today. Travis Dean Tallyman. His name rolled off my tongue nicely. Joey Ray Tallyman does too. Of course, Travis always wanted to call me Joy Ray. I never asked why, but instead told him, honey, I only answer to the name my daddy gave me, and Joy Ray ain't it. And then I'd laugh. His dark brown eyes would twinkle with a hint of mischief before he'd follow up with, Joey, I'd call you Mary Mother of Jesus if I knew you'd always be mine, sweetheart. You own me, baby doll. Lock, stock, and the junk below. Then he laughed with a hint of redness in his cheeks. He was tough, but he was sensitive. In a Travis-only kind of way. I knew I just missed him. There will never be another like him. All the babes adored him at the club. Hell, all his biker brothers did too. All the way up until you crossed him. Then watch the fuck out. He never hurt me though. I don't think he had it in him. But he damn sure knew I'd be gone if he did. I don't put up with that shit, and I let him know. I told him, Travis, You ever feel the urge to hurt a lady, you best fucking knock on some other lady's door and not mine. I'll kick your ass and crap down your throat. And you know I will. He'd smile big and respond, I know it, Joey. A line I'd never cross. Love you, baby doll. It's funny the little memories that flood back to mind when you lose someone you never expected to lose. I laid in that hospital for 6 months, fading in and out of comas, both natural and induced, without knowing my world had been stolen from me. I laid there every night and day with Travis as if he were truly there beside me. Sometimes now I think he really was, like maybe Jesus allowed him to temporarily stay back with me until I snapped out of things. But is that possible? Or maybe he laid claim to his soul that afternoon as the demon, in the form of that owl, stole him away from me? I'll never know until we hook up again. I hope that's where he is, with Jesus. 'Cause someday I want to see him again, and I know that's where I'm going in the end. It's important to me. We never got to say goodbye, and while that wouldn't change a thing, it's that final goodbye that robs me of closure. It's why I can't empty his drawers in my dresser or take his leather jacket down from the hook on the wall by the back door. That framed picture of him and I on Blackie, our Harley. His last crystal highball glass still sits on the table beside his chair. I won't allow myself to wipe away anything that has ties to him. It's all I own to hold on to my sanity. I laughed out loud. As if this is sanity, I thought to myself. I suddenly felt the bone-stirring pain in my neck once again as it traveled down my body, reaching down into my arms. It comes from nowhere and without warning. Fucking owl demon? Seems he is always just seconds away, as if sitting on a tree limb, just waiting to swoop back down and finish his task of destroying my soul. Damn these memories. There I go, attempting to let them bed back down in my head and make me weak. I despise any sign of fragility in myself, in my bones, my body, and especially my mind. Drowning in self-pity does nothing but brew more powerlessness. This too shall pass. Chapter 6. Virgin Artwork. The Score, Travis My Old Bar, an eclectic mix of locals and tourists. Tonight, it held only 2 open seats at the bar top. The one on the left was next to some fat Sam touristy-looking slob, but sitting at the opposite end of the bar was a young, smooth, athletic type. He could be a physical challenge as he looked fairly buff. Maybe a college football jock or baseball player. God's gift to women with the wavy blondish brown hair and short stubbled beard. If he has green eyes, he's going to be my first prey. My first real kill. Not sure why I now find green eyes revolting, but I do. Maybe because that was the first color I saw after the accident. Trees with green swallowing up my world and spitting it back out with pain. I ponied up to the bar and intentionally bumped his chair with the one I was pulling out. Sorry, is this seat taken? I asked as I smiled and batted my eyes. He turned to me quickly at first, as if he were annoyed to have his attention drawn away from the game on the television. When our eyes met, his attitude quickly changed. Yep, bright green, the green of redwoods in the Santa Cruz Mountains. You poor asshole. You just had to own those plush green eyes. I squeezed my rounded ass in between him and the chair, rubbing it against him before hoisting myself up onto the seat. It was almost too far from the bar for me to reach. Excuse me, gorgeous, I'll help you with that. He scooted his bar stool out and stood, as if returning my action. His crotch purposely brushed up against my leg as he needled his way out and helped scoop my stool closer to the bar. Why, thank you, A couple of seconds passed. Your name? Cole Riley, and you're welcome anytime. You here alone tonight? He asked before he turned back to the game as if he were trying to play it cool. A move that lasted less time than it takes a horny dog to begin humping your leg. He turned back and asked, What are you drinking tonight? I'll order you one. My first, I thought, and laughed internally. Hell, I could suck his wallet dry and empty his card by the time the bar closed tonight if I wanted. I knew his kind. Hell, before Travis, I dated his kind. For a minute, I had another thought. It came from out of left field and deep. Why am I being such a bitch? This isn't who I am. I'm becoming one of those girls I despise. Back to the recent school of thought. I was indeed changing inside, morphing into everything I hated in others. I instantly smelled his cologne. Musky, yet slightly sweet overtones. My mouth watered for the salty metallic taste of blood. His blood. My mind instantly lost any other insignificant thoughts other than attaining my craving. Jameson, please, on the rocks. Even though my thoughts were scattered tonight, I easily seduced Cole and let him know I was going to rock his world tonight. I even gave him a hint of what was yet to come. I'm going to paint you red with your heart pumping out pulses of lust-filled blood. Poor Cole took no heed of my hidden warning. He was too full of the testosterone-induced daydreams of what he was going to get tonight when we got to his house to fully understand. He was truly going to diet tonight in a bright red terror-stricken painting of his own blood. He'd be found tomorrow lying on his blood-stained canvas of stark white sheets smeared and stained with his story of seduction and departure. His eyes fixed in a dead stare at the spot that was filled with me, stabbing the life from him as he lay confused and dying. For me, I'd just slip out after my work was done, leaving my artwork behind as a display of the horror now alive and well within Santa Cruz. A chilling virgin masterpiece of what would soon become a roving gallery filled with chilling pieces of my capabilities. Photos would adorn the walls of baffled investigators, while news spots across television screens and headlines would drive fear and morbid curiosity. My new life given to escape the pains of recovery and re-enter the world in new fashion. Cole fumbled with his keys at the front door. He dropped them twice before I reached around and held his fingers in mine as we both inserted the tip of the key into the slot. Leaning in, I breathed a short sigh of sexual exhilaration into his ear. The door quickly opened as he twisted our hands holding the key, willingly inviting me in. A move he may soon regret, if I created my painting slow enough to allow him to enjoy his victory inside of me before snuffing out his existence. Cole stumbled over to his bar, offering me a drink. I nodded in agreement as I began twisting the buttons on my blouse, poking them through the tiny holes, slowly revealing the inkwork scribed into the skin covering my breasts. His eyes widened with anticipation. "So, are you tattooed over your entire body?" he asked in a voice slightly slurred and inquisitive. "Why, yes I am, Cole. Do you like them?" I asked seductively as I opened my blouse and began removing it from my arched back. "They tell my complete journey up to this point. Do you want to see that story?" "Yes," he answered almost immediately as he turned to face me, spilling bourbon from the bottle as he unintentionally pulled the bottle's neck away from the glass's edge. "Oops," he smiled. "I've never, made love to a woman with tattoos all over her body. I'm ready to see what it's like, though." Slightly offended by his candor, stating he would like to see what it was like, made my thought about the choice I had made. Now reassured I'd been correct. I was going to enjoy making him my first kill, and how it was going to feel. It was going to be rewarding. I set my glass back onto the table without even tasting its contents. I wouldn't call what we're going to do making love. We're going to fuck, and I don't need anything else to fill me but what you already have down here. My hand traveled quickly south to the overly excited part of his body. Cole fumbled, attempting to set his glass and bottle of Jameson back onto the tabletop. Both toppled to their sides and began spilling over the table's edge, but he barely took notice of the mess as I wiggled my hips, shaking my skirt down around my ankles. The race to his bedroom was furious, caution thrown to the wind, our clothes scattered in a trail from the bar stools in his living room to the bed overlooking the lit boardwalk. Cole never noticed me sliding the stiletto under the pillow. His attentions on watching the artwork dance across my naked flesh was too titillating for his eyes to look away. I almost felt bad for him. The entire act so far was like shooting ducks in a pond. It was amazing how close to my dream this event was playing out. His body was chiseled, and I must admit I enjoyed the sensations he was providing me. It had been so long since I'd been with someone. It felt like a shame to end it, but I rolled him over onto his back and slowly crawled on top, grinding my pelvis against his. As he entered me, I began the dream dance while my arms stretched out forward toward his pillows, fingers of my right hand searching for what would be used as my paintbrush in his creative end. Our bodies heaved with an intensity I'm not certain I've ever felt as I leaned farther forward, my breasts pushing against his face. My fingers continued to reach for the hidden blade. It was over so fast. I don't believe Cole felt a thing after the third or fourth puncture into his chest. His head fell back onto his pillow, and as I rolled off him, the words I'd spoken became truth. His heart truly spurted out streams of warm red blood in slowing pulses. His gaze became hollowed, and the shock and fear quietly slipped away into a calm vacancy. A few fading wisps of breath being vanquished from his lungs, and he was gone. The actual kill had ended too quickly and abruptly to fill my new much-expected sensations. I would need to learn to pace myself in the future. As I put my clothing back on and gathered my things, I walked back to the bed and surveyed my first painting I was about to leave behind. A feeling of disappointment washed over me as I stared at the growing red pool of blood soaking into the white cotton sheets. I'd held no previous knowledge of how much blood a body held. I now knew it was quite a bit as I contemplated my act and the force that had come over me to complete it. The oddness of the moment was that as I looked into Cole's eyes, which seemed to stare blankly at the ceiling without expression, I suddenly saw Travis's face, and he smiled at me. I believed it was only inside my head or somehow echoing throughout my body, but I swear I heard his voice as it spoke to me. "It gets better, babe. Next time, do a woman. Just for me, baby doll." My first reaction was a sharp pain in my gut followed by the need to retch, but I turned and walked out through Cole's door, and by the time it quietly closed, I'd warmed up to the idea. Was the alien I suspected was inside of me Travis? A side of Travis I never knew? Chapter 7. Adding to the Gallery. It's amazing that the phrase, "practice makes perfect," is so true. I was becoming quite proficient and causing a new sensation of fear throughout the Santa Cruz area in a very short time. The authorities couldn't understand what had taken over their town so quickly. A madman or team of home invaders. There were no profilers able to come up with a typical outline of a suspect that fit each crime scene they now were investigating. Of course, there was also the fact I myself could not formulate what was happening either. I didn't know what was driving me into this new hunger I'd become a part of. Physically, I shouldn't be able to have the strength. Mentally, I couldn't begin to explain what was going on inside my head. Travis's voice became stronger inside my brain or soul, but I couldn't fathom why. How did he fit into this chaotic craziness? Was this me acting out because I blamed him for not being here? Or for the accident? It was that damned owl's fault. I soon began leaving an image of an owl brushed on the wall with blood using a small paintbrush. I wasn't sure why, but it did create quite a stir with the cops and media. It threw another question other than the fact both men and women were being found murdered in their beds. Now there was hand-painted images of owls being left on the victims' walls. I finally believed I was on track to finding out something that may help explain things. I'd visited my doctor, and for the first time I asked a question that seemed to hit the nail on the head. "So, Doc, I feel pretty good physically, at least. You know, most of the time. Better than I ever believed possible for sure." My mind was fighting inside with not letting too much information escape my lips. I wasn't certain I should tell him just how physical I could become at times. The broken and repaired nerves and bones would also help with any alibi I may ever need to call upon if... my prints or something were ever matched at a scene. After all, I'm the helpless, wounded, and crippled woman who survived the decapitation of her fiancé in a horrible and traumatic motorcycle accident several years back. What better cover could one have? And the scars and medical records to prove it. But I'm wondering, I have a question, Doc.
Yes, Joey, ask away. I'll tell you whatever I can in a straightforward fashion. You know that to be true. I haven't pulled any punches up to this point, no matter how painfully true they may be or answers you don't want to hear.
I know, Doc Peterson, and that's why I feel like I can ask you this. I paused, searching for careful wording. Do you believe there could be some kind of alien, not an alien like from outer space, but alien matter as not normally belonging?
Joey, I think I'm sensing what you are trying to ask. It's the one subject I have been troubled about telling you, especially since you are so close, or I should say, we're so close to Travis. I've thought better of letting you know until I felt you may be mentally ready to hear what I'm about to tell you.
Okay, Doc, I have to say I'm almost afraid now to hear what you have to say.
Don't be, Joey. It's not a bad thing. It's what's kept you alive and from suffering even more.
Doc, you're not going to tell me that I've been a part of some sort of biological experiment, are you? Where I've been recreated in some clandestine lab or something, and now you need me to carry out contracts, are you? I asked hesitantly, but with a slight sense of humor to cover up my sudden discomfort from the topic. After all, I've seen the movies where shit like this happened. Was it real, though? I laughed, but questioned semi-seriously. I am still all human, aren't I? No monkey parts or...
No, Joey. Nothing like that at all.
Dr. Peterson smiled, followed by a short guffaw.
The procedure used on you has been done many times before, for quite a while. It's called a cadaver bone transplant.
He hesitated a moment and watched me. I presumed to get my reaction before he would continue. I smiled, but honestly, I was beginning to become concerned. Did I have a killer's bone in biology inside of me? Could this be what was causing these desires to kill people invade my mind to a point I'd lost control of myself and was enjoying it?
It's really a simple and effective procedure, Joey. You see, we take the bone chips of a donor that matches blood type and biological makeup, and we build a cage around the fractured or destroyed bone in the patient's body. We then fill the cage with the matched bone chips and let them meld and grow into the patient's natural tendency to heal itself. The cadaver donor's bones help strengthen and fill in where your bone makeup wouldn't suffice. It then becomes a rather symbiotic mating, meaning the patient needs the cadaver's bone makeup and material to fully heal to its best possible outcome, while the cadaver's bones need the nutrients and things that the patient's body creates to maintain surviving and growing new bone. It's a perfect marriage of a rather simple solution to a complex problem when so much bone and density is destroyed in a patient. It not only speeds recovery time, but strengthens the patient's new bone growth density with the attributes of the donor's bone material.
I literally sat in the chair dumbfounded.
That's of course boiled down to the simplest layman's terms that I can come up with in a moment's notice. The fact is, finding a donor that works is many times the most difficult part of the equation to overcome. Many times...
So Doc, let me get this straight. I have someone else's bone matter inside me, making my bones heal and become stronger than if they weren't available and inside me?
Simple answer, yes, Joey. If we had been unable to have found a matching donor so quickly, you would more than likely not have been able to walk in here today on your own accord. It would have taken much more time if it were even possible at all. I believe the donor's bone literally saved your life and improve the quality of such that you are now living.
So, have there ever been any complications or added surprises or things that weren't expected? I know it's a crazy question, but
Are you talking something like taking on some of the donor's traits or abilities, habits?
that's exactly what I'm asking, Doc. I felt very different lately. Like maybe there is something alien inside me. Again, no seed pods or anything like that. Just, I know I sound crazy, but
I've heard of a case or two in the past, patients claiming that they feel those sensations too, like they have new character traits that didn't exist before, but in my professional opinion, I don't believe that to be possible. Not for a minute. Not physically possible. Now, there may be the possibility your mind is playing tricks, so to say, with you, or you perhaps are reading things into non-existent issues, maybe not seeing coincidence as just that, possibly.
am I able to know who my donor was so I could thank their family?
Joey, usually that is up to the family to say if they want the recipient to know who donated. But in this case, there was no family we were able to contact for permission, only the donor's signature on the back of their driver's license. And that is what has kept me from letting you in on the who until you yourself asked.
Who, Doc? Whose bones are inside my body? Who is responsible for saving me?
I think you should probably sit down before we talk. Chapter 8. A Flood of Questions.
I couldn't think. The off-white walls began closing in around me. Claustrophobia was new to me, but I sensed that must be what I was feeling. I instantly felt too much overwhelming emotion along with a multitude of new questions filling my brain. I was mentally drowning. My coping mechanism was being triggered. I'd been experiencing internal battles for several months. Hell, several years since the accident. But now the inside of my head was the battlefront in a war I knew nothing of survival. The demilitarized zone was in the rearview mirror, but I had no intentions of backtracking to any safe zone no matter what happened from this point on. I was just told in not so many words that the spoils of my existing war so far were mere trophies given to me by my true love through the gift of his cadaver bone chips. It was his battles of the hunt I had taken over, but I had held no idea of the activities he was into before now. Travis had somehow kept his dark secret of killing for fun from me. I was now just a mere extension of the sickness he had harbored covertly through the transfer from his bones to mine. As I sat in the now cold and stark doctor's office, my brain attempted to decipher the information I had just received. I was shocked. I was angry with Travis for doing what he was doing while he claimed to love only me. I was pissed at Doc Peterson for not telling me this now damning information, but for using Travis's fucking cadaver bone to begin with. My life had been a roller coaster since the wreck, and I think now I'd rather be homebound and crippled, free from this new curse, rather than to have succumbed to it and lost my power of choice. And then I felt it coming. It was as if my internal thoughts of conflict had awoken the beast within. I tried to fight the feeling washing across my face as I prayed Doc would be looking away as the smile roared in like the incoming tide. My lips quickly began their trek, defeating my will to refrain from the widening and stretching of my face until my entire mouth full of teeth stuck out. My giveaway, my tell, my Cheshire cat grin, pearly whites shining like a troupe of bright white Broadway dancers stretched out across center stage with bright lights drawing attention. I quickly turned and ducked my head to cover up the unwelcome and maddening smile.
Joey, are you okay?
Doc Peterson asked as he attempted to survey the look as it washed over my face. I'm fine, Dr. Peterson, I quickly spit out. My body is healing at a faster pace each day. I'm glad to hear I was able to retain a small bit of Travis to keep with me, like a memento or tribute. I forced the repugnant smile to withdraw slightly, and now know he didn't just leave me without being able to take care of me the only way he was able to. I allowed my smile to show just a little.
The grin was just a reaction from a memory I recalled, a moment we shared together a long, long time ago. In fact, it was an entire lifetime ago. It'll take some time for everything to settle in and gel within my little world, my psyche. As you certainly know by now, I'm ninja strong. I'm nobody's little bitch. My father saw to teaching me that before he left this cruel world. I reckon I'll be carrying on his tradition along with a little of my much-loved Travis's from now on. Thank you, Dr. Peterson. I'll see you next checkup, right? I winked along with my damned smile. I'm feeling good enough that I believe I could even ride occasionally. Dr. Peterson looked up from the chart in his hand. Now, Joey, don't be getting too far ahead of yourself. While I'm a firm believer of getting back on the horse eventually. I smiled and laughed. Oh, I'm not climbing on the biggest horse. Maybe start out with a little Sportster and work my way up. The spot of my neck began its burn and slow movement down to my arms. It was the sign the hunt would soon be calling my name again. Now, instead of just some vacant, unexplainable desire within my soul calling me to kill, I was now able to attach a name to it, and I quietly whispered aloud just under my breath, "It's okay, Travis. I'll see you tonight. We'll shred one together. This time, you pick her out." I could feel the continued burn in my cheeks as my smile grew wider once more. The Cheshire Panther was clawing at my soul, hungry for a prowl through the Santa Cruz nightlife. Somewhere tonight, I'd be painting a bedroom crimson red, adding another work of art to my roving gallery along with a bloody sketch of an owl in flight. It would be a real newsworthy killer of a story for the morning or afternoon news. The boardwalk lights seemed extra bright while the bar traffic heavier than normal. My eyes darted back and forth in search of my desire. Across the pier, a beautiful brunette drew the lighter to her cigarette. The flick of the steel against the flint brought the flame dancing in the green pools of her irises. I heard his inner voice inside my soul. "That's the one, Joey. I can see it now." I nodded to Travis as if he were standing near me and spoke in a whisper as I slowly walked across the wooden planks to make my move. "This one's for you, baby doll. I hope you enjoy my work." The woman's lighter flickered before dying out, unable to relight as she rolled the small steel wheel across the flint again. I pulled the Zippo from my jeans pocket, flipping the lid open and running it up my leg until the flame came alive all in one fluid motion. I lifted it to the tip of her cigarette and said, "Your lucky night, honey. I'm a sucker for green eyes. What's your name?" "Sasha Kingsley. What's yours?" "Joey Ray." I smiled, showing my perfect teeth. "Great night for drink, don't you think?" "Well, Joey Ray, I never say no to a Jameson. I just happen to know a sweet little dive where we can get a couple of those. And I know a place we could maybe end up tonight after closing time." "Sweet. I could use some company tonight. Do you like paintings? I have a gallery of my own that your likeness would fit perfectly."
Chilling tales for dark nights.